So I got a scene up from Clerks here on the things. It says always me every year when I do this. It says you hate people, and the guy says, yeah, but I love gatherings. Isn't it ironic? And I feel like a lot of times that's really me. It's a real struggle to put this thing together, but we do it, and I'm always glad we did after it's over, but going into it, not so much. So first of all, I want to say welcome. And putting on an event like this is a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. And, you know, it's been a good event and great response from you guys. But putting on anything like this is always tough. And this year, Schneider said they really appreciated it that we did this. And so Thad said, he said, we really appreciate you guys doing this. You can have anything you want. And I said, anything? And immediately I said, $1 million, because that's just what somebody says, what do you want? You $1 million. And Thad says, yeah. And I said, yeah, you're right. That's crazy. And plus all these people need stuff too. I work with them. I said, if you could just add the PNT parameter to the RIN block, that would be great. If you could just add that parameter, we'd be good. And then the good news is I found a bank here in town that can cash a check for $1 million. So good to go. You know, it's intimidating being in a large group of such smart people like this, and it is a little bit. I'm used to not being the smartest person in the room. Anytime Larry and Don Bartusiak are in a room with me, I know I'm not. But I don't like to be at the very bottom either, so that's always like a little bad, you know. But thankfully, Gaylon Hicks is here, so I don't have to worry about that either. Thank you. So, well, are there any people that have never been to one of these before? Any new people? New people? Everybody look around at the people that haven't been, really, and make them feel welcome and try to share your knowledge. This is a great group of people. It's a very good community, very friendly. This is a friendly bunch. So try to find those people and help them out. And so be encouraging too. Let's have questions and conversations and make this something that's useful for everybody. If you don't know me, and how could you not really? I'm David Johnson, and I want to introduce myself before Thad or Gaylon gets a chance to do it for me. So I've been doing this for a long time. Started years ago in controls, but I was David Johnson, very common name. I was born in 1964, and David was the second most common first name, and Johnson was the second most common last name that year. So I get a lot of emails to people that aren't me, but are David Johnson. But there's only one of me, believe me. I work for EOSYS. We're kind of hosting this thing, yeah. And we used to be Premier System Integrators. Some of us know us from way back because I've been doing this stuff forever. In fact, I had a sign-up book, if y'all look, from 1998 and 1999 out there. And there are people, in 98, I was working for a company called Globe Manufacturing. In 99, I was working for Premier. So that's how far back we go. So Premier goes way back. And in 2021, we rebranded to be Employee-Owned Systems. That's what the E and the O stand for, like EOSYS, Employee-Owned Systems, right? And so we paid a marketing firm for that, you know, genius name. And yeah, and I tried to get it renamed. I was trying, my goal was to call it, we were going to be called Miracle Controls. That was my goal. And it was going to say, if it's a good job, it's a miracle. That was going to be our slogan, but they didn't go for that. My title is Director of Business Development for the Process and DCS groups. So I'm out like doing sales, but I still do a lot of hands-on type work and everything. But basically what that title means is that if I come to your plant and do work for you, I have a credit card and I'm authorized to buy you lunch. So it's not really a highfalutin as it sounds. And about once a year, I bother a vice president. Well, he says I bother him a lot more than once a year, but once a year I bother him and ask for several $1,000s to put this show on. And then we have to sign contracts for a room and the food and stuff like that. And then the goal is that I don't waste or lose too much of his money, and that, you know, somehow, sometime it pays off down the road. And I do appreciate the fact that my company puts a lot of trust in us to do this, and they do front a lot of this money ahead of time to let this go on. That's one of the reasons that I get so stressed about this, is like we're usually $10,000, $15,000 into this before the first person is signing up, and I'm like going, hope somebody shows up. So I really appreciate seeing a room full of people like this. It means a lot to all of us, and hopefully it will mean a lot to you by the time this is over. But I'm not up here because I'm a director of business development or because I work at EOSYS. I'm here because in 1994, way back in time, I worked for a company called Globe Manufacturing in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We were a Foxboro system. And back in 94, I started an email to the Foxboro user community. And every week I would send out an email, and I was a one-person clearinghouse. People would send me mail, and I would send it out, and I would answer questions, and other people would answer questions. And I did this every week for years. And then it got bigger, and we got bigger, and we got more tools. And then finally, this thing kind of grew into the list that we know today. Let me see if this clicker works. Maybe not. Oh, maybe if I hit this button, I'll try something. There we go. That's the welcome. There we go. Okay, and so the email list has grown and grown, and then we finally migrated over to freelist.org. Here's the QR code for those of you who are not on the email list. But as of February 9th, which was a little over a week ago, a couple of weeks ago, we went down, get the list, and we had 1,147 unique email addresses on the list. So when you send an email, you're sending it to over 1,000 people. Now, I realize not all of them are still active on it, although the list does get cleaned up. It is not just, dead from years before, but you're probably hitting about 900 active emails. So when you ask a question or put some out, 900 Foxboro users are seeing that, and those are the responses you get back from it. So it's a great resource, has a very high signal to low noise, and we are very aggressive about keeping the list clean and moderating it, and we don't allow sales things or spam on the list. I mean, we will mention products, but we're not a sales thing. So it's a very clean list. So I've been doing this. I was in the book in 1998 out there. I'm here today. I've been doing this kind of stuff ever since. I see a lot of value in this. It's good for us to get together. It's good for us to be in a room together. It's good for us to talk. It is important that we talk, not just listen. I think it's good for everybody to get to know each other and stuff. And one of the things that you get into is, the people say, well, why don't we just do this as a Teams meeting? Why don't you, do this YouTube in your spare time? Why don't you do, and I don't think you get as much out of it that way. I think that there's value in us getting together. And I think it's important, and I talked about this last year a little bit, that the engineers advocate for themselves. It's important that you guys go to your management and you say, hey, we need these tools to do our job. We need to upgrade this. We need this. And you have to go make that stick, because the answer is always going to be, we don't have any money for that. That is the answer. We don't have any money for that. And one of the guys that wanted to come to this, who I talked to, he said he couldn't come because he couldn't get travel budget for this. Okay. So I figured that most of you guys, and I value your time, I realize this is not free. Most of you guys, it probably cost your company for 3, maybe 4 days, depending on how your travel worked out, probably around $5,000 for a person to be in this room in dollars to your company. Okay. Well, the guy that told me he didn't have money to travel because they didn't have a travel budget, and this isn't his fault, but the CEO of that company, I went and looked it up, is making $6 million a year. Okay. The CEO of that company is making $6 million a year, and he can't get, $5,000 to come to this. If the CEO worked 55 hours a week for 52 weeks a year with no days off, and you do the math, he's making a little over more than $2,000 an hour. And so I'm not saying that to be down on those guys. What I'm saying is, don't let them tell you they don't have money to do the important things that they need to do when we got guys making, multi-million dollars a year and doing that kind of stuff. And so, and how do you provide value back from this, right? This is an opportunity for you to bring value back. If you have a process that takes 5 hours to do a batch, 5 hours, and you can shave 3 minutes off time off of a batch that takes 5 hours to do, just by what you learn here. How do we improve this? How do we speed things up without sacrificing the quality? If you can speed it up three minutes on a 5 hour per batch, you would get 100 minutes a week, which would be 3.5 days a year of increased production. 3.5 24-hour days a year of increased throughput. That's a lot of increased throughput. And then if you don't have a batch plant, say that that's not what works for you. If you could get $1 an hour off of all of your facilities, just improve it by like whatever they're spending, $1 an hour across an entire plant, that's $8,544 a year. That is not much improvement for a fairly significant gain. So if you learn something that saves them $1 an hour, you've more than paid for coming to this kind of conference. It's important to advocate for yourself. You guys are bringing value. You're not a cost, and you need to make sure that they understand that. You know, there's this like Zen parable thing about that I read, and it's a guy called Mokusin, and he has a thing, and he said, here, let me see if I got another slide. There you go. And he went to a person, and they had trouble with money, and he went to him, and he said, what would you say if my hand was always like this? Couldn't open my hand. And the guy said, your hand would be deformed. He said, well, what if my hand was always like this and I couldn't close it? He said, that also would be a deformity. So sometimes you got to hold on to your money. Sometimes you got to spend your money. And it's important to know that and know how to do that so that you can make this happen. Now, some of you guys are still running these, right? If you're running these, your hand is like this, okay? We need to spend a little money, okay? Now, you know, there aren't a lot of people I see out there in industry that got their hands like that, okay? Now, this is a two-way contract, and I get that, right? Schneider has a part to play in this too, right? If we're spending money, they've got to give us products we want. They have to be good. They owe us something in return for that. But that's not what this is about. This is about our part of the equation. And with that, to help you get your money, I would like to demonstrate, which we're going to have, the EOSYS players. This is a high quality theater production. You won't often get this kind of thing, these kind of shows for the money you spend. And this is called Easy Money, or How I Learned to Quit Worrying and Love Cybersecurity. So give me 1 second to get into character, and we will give you this high quality presentation.
Test.
Don't often get this level. Hold on. Good. Okay, everybody. Think back in time. Come with me on this time journey, and we go way back to 1998. 1998, Bill Clinton is the scandal-plagued president in the White House. Titanic is the movie everybody is going to see, and the world is eagerly awaiting the turn of the century. Hello, young process engineer. How are you?
Great. Plug and play is the best thing ever.
Wonderful. What can I do for you?
I need a raise.
A raise? That's crazy talk. Why, when I was your age, I made $200 a week and was happy to get it. You people are so demanding these days. I can't give you a raise.
Well, then can I get some money for the control system?
The control system? We've just upgraded everything to Ethernet, and these Sun boxes are state of the art. There's no reason to upgrade this control system, and we're making all the widgets we can. We can't shut down for that.
We're running great until January 1st, and then the year's going to hit 2000, and I don't know if everything's going to run so well. I wouldn't be surprised if you lost your job because you weren't Y2K compliant.
Man, I would hate to lose my job over not being Y2K compliant. I tell you what, let me give you $150,000, and you go take care of this problem for me. Wait a minute. Great management decisions like that deserve to be rewarded. No, none for you, young man. You just go give me some of that Y2K compliance I need.
Hey, Mr. Foxboro salesman.
Hey, what's going on?
I need some Y2K compliance.
Oh, Y2K compliance. I got you covered. I have a sticker that means that you're Y2K compliant. And I will let you get it for, how much money do you have?
I have 150,000. If you give me that sticker and give me a CP60 for the lab.
Man, you drive a hard bargain.
And scene. Okay. Now, you may have noticed that John didn't get the money he wanted, but he got something better than money. He got hardware for the lab. And how did he do it? By using Y2K to do it. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's 25 years till the next century. No, it's 75. We're only 25 years into this century. How are we going to get this money? How can we do this? Well, here we're going to teach you how to do it. Hello, young process engineer. How are the Windows Server upgrades going?
Great. Plug and play is the best thing ever.
What can I do for you?
I need a raise.
A raise? That's crazy talk. Why, when I was your age, we made $250 an hour, and we were happy to get it. And you young people are so demanding these days. I can't believe that you want a raise.
Well, then can I get some money for the control system?
Control system? Well, we just spent all that money upgrading the firewalls, and there's the Windows is all state-of-the-art stuff. No, we can't give you money for that. Besides, we're making all the widgets we can. We can't shut down to do an upgrade.
Well, things are running great until ransomware attack. I wouldn't be surprised if you lost your job because you weren't cyber secure.
Man, I'd hate to lose my job over something like that. Everybody is talking about cybersecurity. I tell you what, I'll give you $1 million and you go get me some of that cybersecurity. Wait. Great management decisions like that deserve to be rewarded. None for you. Take that over and give me some of that cybersecurity.
Hey, Mr. Foxboro salesman.
Hey, what can I do for you?
I need something to make me cyber secure.
Oh, great. I have something just for you. I have a sticker that will make you cyber secure. But I will pay,
How much is that going to cost?
how much do you have?
$1 million.
Son, you drive a hard bargain.
Okay, so once again, what you see is the way to do this is you've got to ask the right questions to management. I think we've given you a good indication of where you need to head. Now, what we want you to do is take all this money that you've got now, and we're going to have Thad come up here and show you all the new products that you can use and spend your money on. So here with the Foxboro roadmap is Thad Frost.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about templating with Control Editor. Just show of hands, how many people in this room have Control Editor, Control Software, Orchestra, whatever you want to call it? So a little less than half, it sounds like. We'll call it half. So I've got, first of all, who I am. I'm David McCullough with the EOSYS. You've heard that name a few times now, so I won't repeat it. I'm a senior engineer with us. I've worked in almost all of our offices. I moved around a little bit and settled down working with our Foxboro group. And in particular, working a lot with the newer software, trying to set better standards. And I'm a big proponent of getting the best value out of Control Editor that you can, which is why I wanted to talk about, there we go. Just briefly, real short agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about Control Editor, just barely enough so that you can follow the presentation if you don't already have the software using it. Talking about the different types of templating, if you will, that you can do in Control Editor, and then just, pros and cons of each of those approaches. So for anybody who's not programmed in Control Editor or Orchestra, I've got just a little picture slide here, if you will. I don't know how well you can see the picture on the left, but the key difference or the key point that you need to know about if you're not familiar with Control Editor is, in ICC you have compounds, you have blocks. You might use loop ID to kind of subdivide your compound. That's usually close to what a strategy is in Control Editor. So it's essentially inside a compound, you have a few blocks that you group together into a strategy. It comes with a nice diagram like you have on the right. So for what we're talking about, you can just kind of think of it as a group of blocks that go onto a drawing together. It has input and output flags. So hopefully that makes sense to the half the room that hasn't used Control Editor. If not, catch me and we could talk all about it. So, I think we've all at some point tried to standardize and create templates, so I won't spend too much time talking about the advantages, but just so you know what I'm driving for when I talk about templating, really trying to reduce mistakes, things like not picking the right option on a PID controller, things that you set on every block every time, just making so you don't have to set it every time and trying to reduce those mistakes. So the first two kind of go together. A big one that I think is an advantage is if you have a template that you're using in your control system in the programming and configuration, makes it easier to kind of standardize your HMI side to go with it. A lot of consistent functionality there. And then the last one that I called out is when you have these templates, if you find out like inhibit option, you realize you don't like the way you're using that on this strategy. Today you go through, you update how you got to find all the blocks, you go update them one at a time, or you script it out using some of the templating options we have here with Control Editor, lets you propagate, arguably, I guess, propagate those changes out for better or worse. So three types of templates that I'm going to talk about today. I will just note that you can have a compound template that I've never found a use case for, but 10 people will tell me after this what they use it for. I'm going to focus on strategy templates, block templates, and strategy snippets. So again, strategies are a group of blocks and input and output declarations. When I talk about a strategy template, that's a predefined set of those blocks, the way they're connected, and whatever input and outputs from those strategies that you have. And just because I'm going to use this word a lot, instance is what Orchestra Aviva calls when you use that template. So you might have a discrete valve template strategy, and then you'd have hundreds of instances of that strategy. So when you actually use the template, that's called an instance. So the biggest thing I point out that's a little counterintuitive or might bite you down the road if you're not thinking about it is that when you build a strategy template, I said all the blocks, the connections, input and output declarations on that template, that is restrictive in that if I build a discrete valve template and I build all these blocks, the first thing you run into that's kind of a headache is I want to add a block on this particular valve. And that's where you get into a template. You can't add additional blocks. You can't delete blocks. When you say a discrete valve template has a GDEV, a CIN, and a COUT, that's all you get. So that leads into ways of getting around that. You just, put those blocks in a different strategy, a parent strategy, a couple ways around that. But you do need to know that you're defining that for everywhere you try to use it. So that's a strategy template. Kind of a subset of that will, or a smaller scale template would be a block template. So, you know, in our discrete valve strategy example, that's everything that I think I need to handle IO type automatic behavior for a discrete valve. A block template is just a single block. So there's no connections involved. It's just this block and these parameters are part of the template. And again, we'll talk pros and cons about why you use one or the other, but just wanted to define that. And point out in particular, if you are following the install guide or the deployment guide for control software, Foxboro's recommended practice is actually to create your own block templates. If you use control editor, there's the $AIN, for example, block. Foxboro's recommendation is to create your own template because the AIN block template is protected, so you can't change anything about it. So a lot of the times, you know, people, there are pros and cons to this, but you might create company name _ AIN, something like that. Strategy template, strategy snippets is the last one. This is similar to a strategy template in that it's a collection of blocks, connections, input, output declarations if you want. The key difference is that a snippet is just copy and paste, and then it doesn't care anymore about your snippet. So you can then delete blocks, add additional blocks. The snippet doesn't have to be a whole strategy. You just drag it into your strategy. So again, the obvious plus side there is you've got flexibility to change it from the template. The downside being that you can change it from the template. So starting with strategy templates, just a few of the tips and tricks when you actually implement this, the problems you'll run into and ways to make them better. I've talked a little bit about a discrete valve as a strategy template, motor, PID loop, all of these are common strategy templates you might have. And the main challenge that I think makes it hard to use these, that you have to kind of work around is this. If you have, let's take a PID block, for example, you know, maybe 10% of your PID blocks, you're using the track parameter. The other ones, you don't want that to be connected. Well, the connections are part of the strategy template. So you have to do, I've got two ways I'll talk about, you know, what do you do then? Because you can't just not fill in that input declaration. If you do, I'm sure you've all, the half of you that use this have seen this invalid input declaration error. So you have to connect it to something if you say that it's connected in the template. Which means two things. One, you have to find a way to get around that. And two, that you have to create pretty much an input declaration for every possible place you think you might use it on that template. So there's two things that I do to get around that. The first, on your template, for every parameter that you connect or enter a value for, there's a little lock next to it. So when you build your template, you could say, I want this to be connected, but I'm not going to lock it, so I can disconnect it in all my instances. Or if it's a value, I want to put in a default value for controller option, but I want them to be able to change it. So if you leave that unlocked, one way you can get around this idea of this input declaration error when you deploy is just connect it by default, or not leave it unconnected if you don't think you're going to connect it very often, but then just leave it unlocked so that you can then, when you create your instance of that strategy, you can go in and change from the template. So in in general, the way my approach for this is usually I start out with anything that I think matters is locked, because you can always go back and go to the template and unlock it when you find the use case later. On the flip side, if you leave it unlocked, you can lock it, and then it's going to go change it everywhere that you've used that. So that's one way to solve this issue of having input declarations that you sometimes use, sometimes don't. The biggest downside to this is that if you're looking at that, it still has that input declaration. So you may see that the track input declaration, if you will, you may see it and it may be specified that it's coming from some block, but you've deleted the line connecting it to your PID block. So if you're only looking at the declaration, that can be a little confusing, that it's always there whether you're using it or not. So the other way that that we get around this when we can is leave it as a connection. If you don't need the operator to be able to change it, you can just connect it to a constant block. So if you're trying to be modern, I guess, or comply with control editor, you would do a compound.strategy.declaration name syntax, if you can read that on the TVs. My recommendation here is, what I would normally not recommend is not to use that syntax and use the classic compound : block dot parameter. In general, I don't recommend that because now it's not going to show up on your diagram. If you're looking at your strategy, it doesn't show up as, you know, all these parameters are connected to false. So, so I use this sparingly, but the main reason that I think this works out better is that if you create a constants strategy in every compound, then in your template, you can just connect it to :false.cin. That's its default value. By default, it's going to be connected to the false block in the same compound. Whereas if you do the normal connection method, you have to go fix the strategy name every time you create an instance, which is what I have in bold here on your slide. And then the last couple, you know, if you include that constant strategy in every compound, then you don't have to update the compound name either. It just, you create your instance and it defaults to true, false, 0, whatever constant you want. And just a step ahead is you can create a constants strategy template that has those 3 blocks in it. Save yourself a little time. So the second lessons learned for anybody who's learning this and doing it for the first time is what happens when you go to that template. You know, let me just talk about the most basic example, and you change one parameter. You go to the template and you change incopt from a 0 to a 1 or 1 to 0. I don't know what the default is. If that is unlocked and you modify the template, nothing happens. It doesn't go update any of your instances. It only matters when the default value from that point forward, if you go build a new instance. If it's locked, it's going to go out. It's not going to go out. It's going to go into your Galaxy database, and it's going to update all the instances and change that value to a 1, whatever you set it to. And I will just point out for the half the room that doesn't use control editor, that doesn't update it in the controller right away. The Galaxy is essentially offline from the controller, and you have to then go tell each block one at a time, all at once, that you want to deploy that change. And that's like hitting done on a block in ICC. So that makes sense. That's pretty intuitive, I think, when you see it. The part that can be confusing is what happens if you want to delete a block from the template. Well, if you go to the template and you hit delete, it'll let you delete it. It'll let you make whatever changes you want. You go to save and close and check in that template, and you'll get an error. The reason being is that you have that block deployed to the CP in however many instances you have. So there, if you know that, the error makes sense, but it may not make sense unless you already know. So the key there is you have to go to all the instances of this strategy and undeploy that block you're trying to delete before you actually delete it. So if you don't realize that, or you miss one, or somebody goes and deploys it while you're in the middle of it, you will save your template and it'll give you that error. You go find the ones deployed and you undeploy it. And once they're all undeployed, then you can go check in your template, and then it goes through, you'll see it. It'll go one at a time through your instances and open that strategy instance, delete the block, and then check it back in. If you're watching on the derivation view, you'll see it go through the list. So that's not too bad. The flip side of that is, what if I want to add a block to my template? It's not as quick and easy as I think it could be, specifically because it's easy enough to go update your template, save and close. When it checks in, it'll go add a block to all your instances, but now it doesn't know what to name that block. So it makes up a name lock like my block underscore 001, my block underscore 002. So it's pretty time consuming. Now you've got to go to each of those instances and open it up, find that block on the diagram, right click, rename it, or you can open it and type it in. But you do have to go to each one of those, or use direct access to script it out, which isn't that straightforward either. All right, so strategy templates is kind of the, yes. Okay. The delete or the add? Okay. Yep, if you're trying to delete a block from the template. So let me use an example here. I've got my GDev strategy, and let's say I had a calc block in there that when I first started, I thought every strategy, every discrete valve would have the same start and stop logic. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So later down the road, I realized that's a mistake. I go in, I put in individual logic, not part of the template, for every discrete valve. And now I want to get rid of that calc block that was originally there. If I just go to the template and try to delete it, when it checks in, it'll give me an error because there's 103 instances of that strategy template and they're deployed to the CP. So it won't let you delete it, because then you wouldn't have that block in your Galaxy database, but it'd be in the CP. So before it'll let me delete it, I have to go undeploy it from all the CPs. And then only after that block is undeployed from all those strategies. Yep, in this example, the calc block. So yeah, you can just, if you're down, just undeploy everything, why not? That's not super common, so you have to kind of go through and from the tree view, find that calc block on every strategy, check the box and hit undeploy. Or again, direct access scripting. Does that make more sense with an example? All right, pivot a little bit. That was a strategy template. And let's talk about block templates. So I've, just a common use case for a block template is like a calc block, where I've got some commonly used formula that I want to make sure it's the same everywhere. We talked about locking parameters. You can lock or unlock the logic behind the calc block. So an example of where we use this recently, where you might want the logic to be unlocked, is we had an interlock calc block where the comment was the name of the interlock. You know, our interlock logic was the same everywhere, that all 16 inputs must be true. But the comment we wanted to actually show on the HMI, and we wanted that to every instance of that to be unique. So we put in placeholder interlock names in the block template, and then anywhere we want to have an interlock, we use this block template. And because it's unlocked, once we create it, you can go update the logic however you want. Something like a flow weighted average or something is a pretty complicated math equation that you will mess up every other time you try to do it, probably. So that's an example of kind of a library object. You know, there is no mass weighted, flow weighted average block type. So a block template is kind of like, especially with calc blocks, it's kind of like creating your own block type. You set the logic, you lock it, you test it, and every time you use it, you know how it's going to behave. So, and again, I mentioned this earlier, but according to Foxboro, you should be doing that on new installs, creating your own block calc A, for example, block type, so that you can, best example that I always use for this, if you put a RIN block on a strategy, the parameters that it show are RIN-P and value status, the two most commonly used parameters on a RIN block. So the biggest use case is if you create your company name _ RIN, you can then go and add this very rare parameter called the measure parameter. If you don't know what that is, talk to me later. I'll let you know all about it. Actually, talk to David Johnson about it. Anyway, so you can kind of change what a default RIN block looks like. You can say, I want to, if you have one array historian, you can say, I want to historize every measure parameter of every RIN block, if you were so inclined. So that's the other use case for block templates besides these, calc blocks. That's calc blocks and sequence code are the two that I use it the most for. You can come up with whatever combination of reasons you'd want to use a block template. The big thing is it's only one block and its parameters. You don't get any interconnections with other blocks by using that template. All right, so strategy snippets. We talked about strategy templates and some of the challenges there. With a snippet, you go to your strategy instance, and if it's a discrete valve, I know I'm always going to have the same 5 blocks plus more maybe. So I may decide that rather than having a discrete valve template that is very fixed and unchangeable, I may just create a snippet for a discrete valve. Then I just open a normal strategy that's not based on a template. I drag my 5 blocks from that snippet, it puts them on the diagram, and then I do whatever I want. Delete blocks, add other blocks, change connections, change parameters. A snippet is kind of a one-time thing. It's once you drag it in there, they're no longer connected in any way. The other use case that I have for snippets, there's a couple. Sometimes I'll put a snippet with just one block on it, which is a little counterintuitive, but there's a couple scenarios that makes sense. One, it could be used kind of like a block template, except it's not linked to the template. So maybe you have a forward reverse motor starting config that you like on a calc block. You can, rather than making a block template, you could just build a snippet with one calc block on it and drop it in that way. The other one that I use it for is if I create a block template, I'll often put that block template in a snippet if it's a calc block, because depending on your options, if you drag in a calc block, it tries to make a whole logic diagram for it, which is nice if it's like and or logic, but it takes like 15 minutes to drag in a calc block template if you're using all 50 steps and the graphic representation isn't helpful. Well, if you drag it in, it's going to try to do your logic diagram for you every time, unless you drag it into a strategy snippet and tell it you don't want the logic diagram. When you drag from that snippet, it won't try to do that. And then, doing okay on time here. The last comment I'll make, and I maybe alluded to it a little bit, is these template types are not individual. It's pretty common. You might have a block type. I talked about our interlock block template. Well, our discrete valve strategy, we wanted all of them to have interlocks. So we had a strategy template for a discrete valve. And in that strategy template, you can have other strategy templates if you're okay with nested strategies, or you can have block templates like our interlock block template. And then I already mentioned the snippets library can have strategy or block templates in there. All right, so that's intentionally short. I think I have another 10 minutes, is that right? 10 minutes, because I know that was a lot of information and completely new information for half the room. So definitely encourage. I intend to have hopefully a lot of questions. So who wants to go first? Besides Rick. Have I got a demo? No.
Test.
I could pull one up, not during this presentation, but I'm over there during the break. I could pull up and give as many interactive demos as you guys want. Somebody behind the column has a question. We'll see if the mic works.
Usefulness and applicability to people that are going to be looking to migrate from an ICC configuration to the modern product offering. How do these things help?
Yep. So I think I talked a little bit about this for the people last year, but the short answer is it's tough because, well, it's super easy if you already use templates in ICC and you never deviate from them. If you do that, you can use templates right away. The tricky part is that nobody does that. Even if they think they do that, when you go in, you're going to find places where the fat fingered one parameter or something. So it's not very good for migrations from ICC. Yeah, with that, short of kind of doing a rewrite to an extent, even if it's a minor rewrite, you're not going to have that kind of consistency. I think in that case, the best path forward in most cases is probably going to be you can create your template based on what should be an ICC, and then you can migrate your ICC code without using templates and try to use the templates going forward. Again, you can always look to see how consistent you are. It's not hard to break a template. I'll point that out. If you build something as a template, discrete valve template, you can right click on it and you can break that template. So it'll say, I'm no longer a discrete valve strategy. I'm just a strategy. I just happen to have been a discrete valve strategy in the past. So you could always try to migrate with the templates, see how close to consistent you are, and break the templates on the ones that don't fit.
Did that answer your question?
not the answer you wanted?
You want to re-ask something? No. Does anybody else have a question?
So there is, and it's actually in the manual. It's from Foxboro. You know, just briefly, the easiest path forward is if you have your loop IDs filled out everywhere consistently. You could tell it to look at that, and it'll create a strategy for every unique loop ID. So that's typically, if we're doing a migration, that's the path we take. We try to, even on a running system, just look at all your loop IDs and try to get those updated first. And then when it imports, it'll just use that loop ID as the strategy name. Yeah, so that's not difficult if your database is good with loop IDs. The tricky part is trying to make a template line up with that, because as soon as somebody in ICC didn't set a parameter, you know, a lot of the times those parameters may not even matter. Like, you may not care about the inhibit option because you don't have alarming on that block. But it is going to be a difference, and you're going to have to look at all those differences and say, does this matter? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have like ICC driver tasks that they use as a template. And if you are doing that, you might have a chance of being able to use orchestra templates. All right, 5 minutes left. Going once. Twice. All right, I won't tell you guys to stand up. I'll let, oh, it's lunch and demo floor time. So is that right? 15-minute break.
All right. How many CPs are running in your plant? Is it 5, 10, 25? 33. I'm glad you know. How many gateways are running in your plant? FBM 232s, 233s, or FDC 280s? At least 20. Got a little echo over here still. Got TechMan on it. Yeah, you not hear it? Can you name all your gateways? These components are crucial to the operation of your plant, yet we often don't think about them for months on months on months. How often do we monitor their health? There are often telltale signs that they're going bad. There's a few key parameters that maybe you could look at for months on end before a problem occurs. Some displays are tailored for specific purposes, like CP upgrades. So in this example, we have the typical station block display. On the left over there, you can see some key parameters, the total points, points disconnected, points deleted, points not found for peer-to-peer statuses. And for one customer, we made a cutover display where we kind of, well, I'll go back to this real quick and say, so this is one for one specific CP in station, but if you have 30 CPs like the gentleman in the front row over here, then it might be annoying to go station by station and look at every single CP. So maybe you have a smart idea during a cutover and you put all of those on one display where you can kind of see them all at once. And you can kind of take this a step further. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm just going to show a quick example of what you could do. This is an example of how this can help for you. So let's build a quick one here. So for example, we just have the two CPs here, CP 1 and 2 we'll call them. And I have the 4 parameters that we just looked at on the station block there. And to the right, you can see the example of what the compound block parameter is for that particular, for those particular parameters there. So what else could we include? Well, back to that station display, you have the idle time over there on the right, and then on the left you have the overruns. This is how many times the CP did not process all of the blocks on the processing cycle. So maybe we include both of those two, and you can see over there on the left that they're included, and those are the parameters to the right there. What else may be good to include? Maybe if the CP is locked or not. If you don't know, in user Fox SP locks, there is a file for each one of your CPs, and if it's locked, you might have a plus sign on it that indicates that the CP is currently locked if someone's in ICC or if an ICC driver task is running or something like that. So maybe we write a custom script to view that and update every so often a custom compound block parameter so you can indicate whether it's locked or open. What else maybe we include? Maybe you get a smart idea and you can check if save alls. Most customers have save alls running constantly. You have save alls running maybe daily, maybe weekly for your CPs to do backups. So maybe you write a custom script and we can put on here whether it's current or up to date. So that way you never, 6 months down the road, a CP dies and you realize you haven't had a backup in 5 months. Maybe we can also include DBVU. In OpFox bin tools, there are a couple DBVU executables or scripts, and based on the CP that you're trying to do it for is depending on which one you may use and the parameters that you may use. I'm not going to go into that too much here, but if you use the -R parameter, it might give you something that looks like this. And you can see right there, there's a bunch of not founds. That shows that the remote linkages are not found. So maybe we write a script to count these and display that as well. That can kind of give you a symptom to know that something is going wrong over time. And these are just the little things you can do over time to kind of keep your CPs healthy so they're not constantly looking for remote linkages that don't exist. Maybe another tool that we can use is dbsync. In that same directory, there's a folder called dbsync, and there's a script called check_dbsync. And this just compares the checkpoint to the work file to the CSA. And you can see in the example here, there's a bunch of asterisks in the work file there. And in the same display here, you can see there's a block called Jeff crash that shows in Fox select, but it does not show in ICC. So that's kind of what this tool would show you. This might happen if ICC closes after you've built a block, but you haven't done a checkpoint. So maybe we can count those there. On the left, you can see that's added. Something else we might want to show is FDSI parameters. So if you have a bunch of parameters for your FDSI that are showing messages sent, received, overscans, usage, that kind of thing, you can display those on there. And this is really limited by your imagination. You can do pretty much anything you want on there. For PLB blocks, if you look in the block book, there's under block status, there's this test bit 19. That'll show if there's any forces for that particular PLB block. So we can easily write a script or tie it to that particular PLB so you can see the highlighted red PLB4 right there. So you can see if there's any forces on in your PLBs. That's just an easy indication. These are just some things I thought of quickly, but I mean, you can really do whatever you want if there's anything that you can think of to kind of just show you the health of your system as time goes on. Later, I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, but Chris Ricker, also with EOSYS, will be doing a presentation on PLB forces that'll go into a lot more depth than this does. But I'm just trying to give you an idea here of things that you could do to kind of keep the health of your system up to date. Is there anything else that you could think of to put on that display? Just off the top of your head, does anybody have an idea? Don't be scared. Mr. Roger?
I think there's going to be presentation on Foxboro system advisory tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
The system advisory status, it's something Arlie's working on with right now.
Some Foxboro system advisor statuses. What kind of statuses?
Like statuses of whether or not the CPs are updated in system advisory.
He just says that someone is working for them right now on maybe some updates for Foxboro system advisor statuses. So potentially you could put some kind of indication on there on from with a custom script that shows whether your CPs are updating in Foxboro. It's a good idea. Anybody else? Roger's the only one with the ideas in this place. One in the back way over there. CP image.
Hello?
Good throw. CP firmware version, he says. It did not catch the microphone for him.
Does it work now?
Fault tolerant status. Drive space, yeah, that's a good one. I know multiple people who have run out of drive space suddenly, and they didn't realize it until months later that, you know, some script was just sitting there backing itself up constantly. And next thing you know, your drive is full, and that causes maybe your historian to crash or something like that. So you could have seen that months in advance, right? All right, well, I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, David, for the introduction. So I am Leiven Taleman. Well, I started already in beginning 90s working with the Foxboro system. So in the beginning it was Unix systems, and then it evolved to Windows and all the new stuff and things. So I think I have some knowledge of Foxboro, and I hope I will show you that now. Okay, TalSoft has a mission, in fact, and that mission is that it creates software in an industrial environment that can be used on an easy and practical way. And our vision is, our main focus lies in creating software, and even on engineering environments where the DCS already has a lot of bunch of functionalities. We believe, and also we experience during all those years, that also their software can be a part of it and make your work better and easier to handle. Our vision is, in fact, that software is a very powerful instrument to handle an automation and to execute that. But there is a big concern about it. You have to create software in an easy way with a good structure. Otherwise, you get things like, I call it spaghetti, and so that is not possible, certainly not in a DCS. Okay, our software handles most of the time in plants where there are several individual packages. I think everyone has a kind of an ERP system, SAP, then you have a DCS system, then you have some MES intermediate systems, also some other tools. And what we see is that all those packages, software packages, are standalone in a way. Okay, so you have certain interfaces, but it is really tough to manage that. And we work and we provide a set of tools to handle that in a better way. Okay, well, let's start with our newest package, that is T-Star Control. T-Star Control is based on an experience of almost 35 years, in fact. It evolves in it, and it combines a complete set of functionalities, tools, and all kind of things that engineering requires, production man requires, field operators require. So it's a whole bunch of things that you can use in your daily work. In T-star control, we base us on 3 major components. First component is everyone has a historian, reading values, put that in a Wonderware historian or Nosy Pi. So that's the basic. Another set of information is your alarming and operator actions. And then you have a third part, and this is in fact your complete control engineering stuff. And in T-star control, these 3 components are combined together. Based on that, it can be create a whole world of very handy functionality and tools. T-star control is also covered with much functionality, like we have the alarming, so there's also a whole package of the MUA standard to find out what is the top 10 alarms, what is your correlation, what is the standing alarms. So all those things are integrated, but it goes much beyond that, because we not only look at the Foxboro system with all its components, but we look also at other systems in the plant. And the main thing is, you will see in a demo that there is a kind of so PLCs, Rockwell, Allen Bradleys. We capture their configuration and integrate that. Also TriStation and Siemens and other PLCs are also all integrated. And then you get a whole bunch of information that everybody can use and see. So we see T-star control as a central place for every guy in the plant to capture information. Okay, well, let's go into detail into some specific features which we think are worthwhile to show here in the audience. So what you see here is a trend chart, just common, regular, nothing special, but you see there the alarming buttons and also the operator action images. So what the system does on a complete automatic way, combine your alarm database and your trending database and show it directly on the screen. Important in here is that there is no configuration manually done. So the whole setup is based on the plant and based on loop IDs or tag naming. So we define certain rules, and then if you go in a certain alarm, it pops up, oh, that alarm contains in that group of tags or loop ID. It captures also all the alarms, which can be on different blocks, and shows it in one screen. And you can navigate. Okay. Another challenge is that at a certain moment in a company, there was a problem due to cybersecurity and security reasons. In the past, it was possible to do a remote desktop connection to your Foxboro system and look at it and navigate from home. Certain moment that company says, okay, no, due to security reason, not possible anymore. So what we've created is we capture the complete set of displays from FoxU with its, it displays itself, its symbols, also its overlays, and we convert that to a web-based environment and show it. So, and now the production guy from home, and in fact everywhere in the plant with some, of course, rules, only privileged ones are allowed to access that kind of information, but they have the possibility to view their plant and to see all what's happening. Okay, no, just in those display visualization, which is in fact a replacement of the FoxView, there is also a very important part, and that is that how you get your dynamic data right to the system, to your web page. For that, we use an optimized mechanism, an optimized collection, where we see, okay, certain display requires, let's say, 1,000 tags. From them, there are 200 tags, which are engineering units and textual loop IDs and naming. Then a whole bunch of them are also trended. And then you have the rest, which are really only stays in the CP. And what we do is we see that display needs those kind of tags, look in the historian, look in the configuration, or look in the CP. So we only capture direct calls from the CP, which are really required. Otherwise, you cannot see your trend lines or your alarming buttons. Okay, good. So this is a view of a complete conversion of the FoxView displays, which are based. And in fact, you have to look carefully to the borders to see the difference between a FoxView screen. But I can tell you, and you will see it later in a demo, that we are not using FoxView to show that. Important in this here is that the customer says, because it's remote, do not allow manual actions to be taken, like changing a set point or thing. So it is a view-only screen. It is technically possible to say, okay, do some things, but then we will create an additional functionality that is very in a secure way to avoid problems to the control room. Okay, what is activated in the FoxView environment is that you can click on a symbol, an overlay pops up. You can also navigate over the buttons to navigate to other displays. You have here a complete list of all your possible displays with some direct, you can tap directly, and on top of it there is a tag search. So if you have a block or a part of a block, just type it in and it will guide you to the right display. And of course, as it's in the web and the T-star control is behind it, so all other functionalities in T-star control can be guided from here. So even if you don't know the tag, but you know the display, you can start from there and then you can navigate to your system. Okay, here on the right, this is a very interesting feature. Okay, you can set it online real life time automatically, or you set it off, but this time is the updating time. So it is for the viewer a directly view that that's the time where the values were last updated. I can tell you for FoxView, we have an update rate that the first time is less than 5 seconds. So 3 to 5 seconds for an updating. So we are nearby a direct FoxView, even if we have to cross over 3, 4 stations, like a DMZ server, an EP server, and then go down to the whole system. Okay, the same solution, because you have Orchestra Control HMI, is also provided in Control HMI. So we capture all the displays from Control HMI, convert them to the web, and the operators and everyone in the plant can see and navigate through their displays. Also, again, with the online functionality to show it. Okay, maybe a little background. We are not, if you're changing displays. The whole stuff works automatically. There's no manual configuration thing. The system does it all automatically. But what we do is, if you change a display, modify it, we are not going to instantly update it in the web browser. We do normally, let's say, a daily review of all changes and updates, and then process in the background, prepare everything, and then users can use it. It can be in the day or during the day, but then there's a manual action to say, okay, I want to have an update now. But just practical, because you can imagine there is quite some logic behind that needs to be processed before you get that kind of display. Okay. What did okay. Now it's Damien. Well, I introduce our CTO, Ilse, and she will give a short demo.
So first, maybe one more thing about display conversion. As we can convert the FoxView displays to the web and convert the Argesta displays to the web, we're also able to convert from FoxView to Argesta. Not perfectly, but we can give a basis on which you can build further if you want to do that. Okay, so now the demo. This is a dashboard of TalSoft control. It shows diagrams, charts about the current state of your plant. At the top left, the depth displays are clicked. Voila, that's it. It's fully clickable, navigatable like an operator would do. Now, an interlock overlay is opened. As you can see, the overlay and also the web display have a time right above to indicate the value time. Also, dynamic charts are automatically converted. Accent buttons are available, and so on. Then, on the top left, you can now enter a display name, click on it, navigate to it. What is also very interesting is that behind every dynamic object or measurement value, we show the compound block that is behind. For example, this measurement value has a compound block, and then you can navigate directly into some functions over that compound block. First of all, we have the process alarms history, which shows a list of all alarms of that specific compound block. Then we have the control browser, which shows more control information, I/O information, input-output links, and so on. Now the control browser was opened. Here we see the block that was shown on the display. It's highlighted in yellow. It has a source input, a RIN block. When we double click on the RIN block, this one pops up in yellow, and we see its source inputs. The MIAS parameter has an ECB input in Foxboro, but also a tri-station source input. Here is thus the tri-station tag name shown. This is possible for all external systems we have. Like Leiven said, it's possible in the downtown for Rockwell, Tri-Station Trident, but also on the top we have Wonderware, SAP, and so on. Then the tag search. You can fill in some characters of the tag. Then a wildcard shows you a drop-down of all tags and all displays. So one tag is now typed in. We see multiple displays where this tag occurs. Click on that. Then the selected tag is highlighted in the display. Again, a right mouse click shows you the compound block behind that item. And now the third possibility, the chart is opened. This chart shows different measurement values that are related to that compound block of the display, and also alarms and operator actions. So here we have like one alarm in red with a tooltip pop-up about the information of that alarm, and then multiple operator actions. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, the TalSoft control package itself contains also a lot of other functionalities, like what is the I/O configuration. There's also an integrated master alarm database so that you can have management of change of all your changes in your alarms, setting off, setting on, changing values. There's also the control engineering, the management of change of all those steps. So we try to capture any information that is available and put it in our database and show it some regular views and to help you understand and work with the system. Okay, well, let's go to another package, and that is our T-Star PAM. The T-Star PAM is in fact already from around 95 that the first version of this tool were created. And the main idea was that at the control room, a rather big one, there were 4 teams active. And at a certain moment, management decided to say, okay, during the day, we need those 4 teams. But at night or in the weekends, we want to have only 1 team or 2 teams work with it. So they require a kind of a dynamic alarm viewing system. And this is what T-Star PAM involves. Inside it, the T-Star PAM itself, it functions just as an ordinary current alarm page, but added with some extra features like possibility to clear, to shelve, to show directly other displays, to historization, execute and analyze the history. And there are some other things. Okay, I should say, Ilse, give a short demo and then maybe, okay, this is the thing that's not required. Okay,
Yes. Voila, T-Star PAM. This shows a list of all current alarms. This layout is fully customizable. Here, the company has chosen first column is the state of the alarm, unact, returned, acknowledged. Then the priority with its color, a custom action, time, compound block, description, and so on. Then on the top, we have all alarm pages. For example, now an alarm page will open called Overview. This alarm page contains 2 sections of alarms. The first section contains all process alarms, and the section below contains more electrical and system alarms. Then another overview they created by themselves is the UNAC overview. It shows again 2 sections of alarms, but only the unacknowledged ones. As Leiven said, each alarm is through a right mouse click. You can do an ACK, a shelf, or a clear. The history, there are also extra functions, but not now going into detail. Then on the top, there are some reporting lists for the operator. For example, the standing alarms. Standing alarm mean that the alarm is taking a while, it's a long time already active and in alarm. And interesting also is the second column of this list of standing alarms, which indicates that an alarm was cleared or shelved. Then we have also a list of shelved alarms. Don't know if you know what is a shelved alarm, but shelving alarm means that you can acknowledge the alarm and also hide it for a temporary time in the alarm list. And then also it's possible to open the display of that current alarm. So here we clicked an alarm and we asked for the display list. There were 3 displays that contain that alarm, of that compound block. Double clicking on it, and then the display in Orchestra, here it is then opened. Voila.
Thank you, Ilse. Maybe I just add, because I was forgotten to tell, in the shelving, for a customer, we provided also a kind of a key lock system. So now in a number of operating rooms, there's a security that says you can only change or modify a priority 1 alarm, which is a safety alarm in that, and then you have to turn a key before changing or shelving that. And we implemented that also in the T-Star PAM so that the order number must be entered, and we detect the key lock parameter from that key to say, okay, you are allowed to shelve it. So there are a bunch of functionalities possible to do an alarming as you want to have and not work with the complete setting. Okay, besides, just go. Besides those two packages, we have also during the years created a bunch of other packages based on questions from customers. And I will go in a short detail. I'm not sure how much time I still have. Okay, 7 minutes, that should be possible. Okay, so an interesting tool is, in fact, that is the one we created before we created that web display environment. So this is, in fact, our tech crawler that is used on top of a FoxU environment, where you can just say right-click, and then you can see the details of the block. And in Fox Select, you can source it. Here, you can source or sync it. So which way you are going, you can go at any way. An important thing is that besides viewing the details of the block, you can also, by your own, add extra parameters and define that. So it's up to you which parameters are interesting, and you can configure that. But for the logic and the calc blocks, it's for a whole bunch of operators a mystery what is happening there. And for that, we created a graphical view of the step logic. So this is a complete and or coding that is replaced by a graphical view, and then the digital status is set in a coloring. So that you see blue is, let's say, 1 and green is 0, and then the operator can see directly what are the interlocks that are blocking your valve or what you're happening. Okay, another package is our T-Star transfer. In the beginning I was talking about, a plant has different packages and they all work standalone. Well, this is a solution to integrate all those different packages together. I can tell you, we have customers with more than 250 interfaces between all their systems. The main idea is that a data transfer, whether it's from a PI to a database or to an OPC or just a file transfer with some buffering and all that kind of stuff. Here you have a complete set of already available connection possibilities. So this setup is created in a point-to-point. So the data transfer is the most reliable that you say from station 1 to station 2. There is a connection, I will put it. And then only we have a central server where the complete view of all your data transfers is monitored. But if that server goes down, all your local transfers keep on running. So there is no problem if the server is active. Okay, another interesting package is our T-Star Energy. Here we can tell you that we collect all kind of energy parameters, and on a certain customer he decided to say, okay, it's a batch related company, so I want to monitor all the energy values of their motors and centralize it. And then we were able to get all those parameters and combine them with the batch. And that guy told me after 1 year they were able to reduce 40% of their energy cost by just saying we are not going in the batch running that motor the whole time. No, we are doing interval, start, stop, and that. And as long as they keep their specification parameters up and running, it's efficient. And that was their goal, to solve the complete cost of that 40%. Another interesting, but besides it, the planning of the teams is done most of the time in Excel sheets and things. And what we created is that the shifts and the teams and all teams in the plant are combined, and you can configure them in a web-based interface. So everyone who has the privileges can define their functions, and there's things that certain people are allowed, others not. And based on that, you can set up the complete planning of all your personnel. Okay, and the last but not least, because this is a thing that I really admire, that is that we have also a kind of a tool that does and handles the templating. Templating in orchestra is quite a difficult task. And what we provide here is that you can create in orchestra a number of strategies, the templates, and then based on some definitions, what we do is that you can generate your templates and your strategies via this tool, but on the other hand, you can also extract the bulk data. So there's a set of rules and formulas that can be defined in here that specify the strategy, and then you can say, okay, scan the system and give me all the tags which are related to the strategy, and update your Excel tag list. What is very powerful in this way of working is that, let's say you have about 10,000 tags in your plant, and you can define your plant with about 100 templates. Well, then you diminish the engineering work from 10,000 to 100, in fact, because once a template is well defined and programmed and tested, and you use it 1,000 times or 100 times, then just an ordinary guy who does not know the knowledge and the details of an orchestra system can just fill in an Excel list of all those tags and says, okay, generate me the control. And all the rules and all the definitions are put behind. So this one, I should say, if you have a lot of work of handling all those 10,000 tags individually and manually, think of templating, and it will help you to reduce that immense amount of. It can also help you to convert from an ICC database to an orchestra database based on this, because this works offline, and that's important in templating. If you're going directly to the standard templating environment, you have a direct relationship to your CPs, and then you risk of waiting for a shutdown before you can update your templates. And that is not the way you can continue, so it's better to prepare everything in advance, verify and test it, even on a simulation system, and then at a certain moment when it's possible, do a complete updating and validation. So I thank you for listening. You know, it's not enough, but I would say if you are interested in some of these functions, come at our booth, and we will happy to show you more detail and answer your questions. Thank you very much.
All right. It's going to be great. I promise. Yeah. This is, I was into Ryman on Friday night. I went to Nashville. I went and saw a Father John Misty concert. I don't know if y'all know who he is. It was great. It was like, that guy he's really interesting, but it was really good. So I learned a lot of stagecraft from him. So I'm ready. No, we're ready. Ready to go. Let's get everybody in. Round them up. Round them up. All right, Thad, this is for you. This is your sales right here. we're gonna at least double the number of CNIs you've sold in the United States in the last, what, 10 years? Yeah, we're gonna go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, something like that. It's gonna be good. I know that. That's why we're gonna at least double it. We can multiply it by any number and still get 0. It's yeah, this product's so good it sells itself. Okay, we up and running? Everything's on? Okay. All right. This presentation is going to be about the Foxboro CNI, which is the control node interface, right? You should be able to talk while we're doing this. And because what
Control network interface.
Control network interface, right. And what they wanted to do with that was do a remote Fox view. And the thing that Leiven did with TalSoft of having a read-only system is he's taken the displays and they're redoing those. He's, you know, reconstructing them, and then they're using those as a web browse item. He has a little server, it sends them out in web browsers. This is a little different, but it's similar. Inside your plant, if you want to have a read-only, view-only type system, this is a way to do it. And it's also interesting because of the adventure that it was to get it to work. So we're going to kind of take you through that. I'm David Johnson. I've already been up here before. This is Rick Targosky from Weslake. He is our, as we call the guinea pig. We're going to go over the CNI use per Schneider. I got the slide deck from Phil Knoble. He was the product manager for this in the past, and then how Rick came up with these ideas, the history at Westlake, how it was implemented, what stumbling blocks and lessons learned, and that is a lot of lessons learned and a lot of stumbling blocks, and then the network implementation, and then we'll do a question and answer, and hopefully we'll have some answers. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to let you talk to what you guys wanted. Here's your clicker. If you hit it, you'll get a bullet. Yep. Try again. It was working a second ago. No, not that one. That one.
All right. Back in the day, as it says, we had Unix running, and under the Unix system, we had Display Manager. With that, we had a Exceed on Demand. Exceed on Demand was running through an Apache web server, and that served up local displays to people at their desktop. Outside of the control room environment, we provided a read-only Foxboro system. As we moved out of the Unix stations and moved into Windows, it says we developed Aspen Graphics, but actually what we did in the meantime, before we got the Aspen Graphics, is we had a standalone FoxView station. And we set up a FoxView station using a Citrix ASA 5505 firewall to protect that FoxView system, FoxView server. But then we actually provided a remote desktop session for that FoxView server back on the company desktop. So you had all users in the plant had, if they wanted to look at FoxView stations, they had a remote desktop on our FoxView server. And if they could break out of that system, and it was set up as read-only, but if it could so happen they could break out, they had full access to that FoxView server, and they could potentially cause damage. And that could be either maliciously, purposely, or accidentally. And so that was all developed while we were PPG and then into Axial. We changed names three times, and now we are Westlake. As Westlake, when Westlake came in, our system of having a FoxView system that was on the mesh, it was actually a FoxView control system, or AW. We were not it became unpermitted. They didn't want to see that at all. Even though there was a firewall protecting it, it was a read-only system. They didn't like that idea. If we were going to do anything with live information to the desktop, we needed to use a relay system of some sort. The answer we came up with was we just abandoned it and then utilized Aspen graphics. We're using IP21 as our data historian. We've developed Aspen graphics to replicate most of the screens that the departments wanted to see, and that's how we've been managing things. Along the way, we became, the new plant manager came. We had a plant manager that came back to the plant. He was at the plant however many years ago, 20 years ago, when we had the Fox view to the desktop. It's by having the access to the actual Foxboro screens, it gives operating people a whole lot better information. You can see exactly what they're seeing in the control room. You can see the block detail parameters. You can see the connections. When you're looking at an Aspen graphics, you're looking at the data, and that's all that you see. You can see trends. The trending packages within Aspen graphics are wonderful. They're excellent. You know, it's a whole lot nicer than what you see in a Foxview trend display. But that's about all. Other than that, you just get data. You don't get access to what alarm settings are and all that.
Right.
So our new plant manager wanted to see that old system come back because he saw the value in it. And along the way, I had become aware, I think that's what it's to say.
It does.
Somewhere along the line, I became aware, and I think it was from our Foxboro field engineer, of this CNI. And the CNI is a device which was introduced in 2017, but hasn't been sold a lot. It's a system that allows you to go a CNI on one mesh will talk to a CNI on another mesh.
Will it?
Well, they try
Eventually.
to.
Yeah.
And so, if it kind of like the old node bus, right? Node bus, you could go node to node, but in the CNIs allow that to happen in a controlled fashion. Wasn't heavily marketed for this application, but there was functionality there. The functionality was there, and in trying to get Foxboro to get it was kind of awkward. You'll see as we go through the presentation that the development here was not straightforward. And why should you think this is a good? You want to talk now, or is this still me talking? We've worked this out.
We can take this, but yeah, I mean, why would you care? Why would you care, you people here? Well, it gives you a really good view-only cyber-secure node. Okay, there's no special environments to deal with. If you have environments, you can just copy them over. Okay, you don't have to go make a view-only environment. You don't have to change your graphics. And when
we simply take our existing FoxView screens and they get deployed to this new AW. Right? You're looking at the same compound block parameters that you're looking at in your FoxView screens. You're looking at it from this FoxView remote server.
They are your Foxboro screens. You
Yes.
just put them on a different node. So it's the same exact graphics. There is no possibility, if you set this up right, of doing an object manager set, even if you get out of those displays, even if you give yourself privileges, even if you get to the OM set command prompt, there is no way that we can find, and we have tried, to set something if you set this node up on your own way. It is very secure. The security on this is excellent. And you can even restrict what can be viewed, meaning if you don't want people to have access to a compound or a specific block, you can take it down to a block. If you don't want them to have access to it on these screens that you have, you can restrict that and they won't see it on this node, on the node you put this on. Yeah? Could you secure it a different way? I think you could, but then you start going back into the kind of configuration we didn't want to do.
Right, then you're stuck with putting up environments. And I guess that said, if within your FoxView system, if you allow access to screens based upon environment, you could probably, I don't see why you couldn't manage that at all. Okay, but now all you're talking about is what's going on up at the AW, right? So you're going to change the environment of that AW to allow,
But also
operators in this system to see go ahead.
if you had environments set up, they transfer over and they still work. Like if this operator logs in into this environment and he sees these screens, if that guy logs in as that operator, he gets that environment and sees those screens. It's the same. It's like taking your system and just moving it over.
And what we have for our application in our plant, we have like 7 different operating areas of the plant. And so depending on how much control room you're in, after the station boots up, the initial environment they go into is their operating area. For the remote FoxView system, we give them a menu choice of area, and it lets them look at the screens for the chlorine department, or it lets them look at the screens for the caustic department or the powerhouse. It gives them access into that. And again, it's strictly a read-only environment, and so you don't need to concern yourself with
Protection classes and environments and setting all of that. So it.
Oh
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
then-
as it says at the bottom here, for the price, it's a good value.
Yeah.
So I had
Do we have that? We
yeah,
do.
it's coming
yeah,
up next. It's
yeah.
coming up next. This is thanks to Darren providing me with this wonderful slide you're about to see here. This tells you what we needed to buy.
Yeah.
And if you look down the bottom, list price of $60,000 gets you into a system that provides you with desktop access to your whole business through all of your desktop users of live Foxboro screens, and that includes CNIs, a couple of CNIs. What we built it on a VM host that we already had in place, so we had no server hardware costs. But you can see there's licensing in there.
Yeah, that's list price to actually build the system. So and it's list price, so it should be discounted. So let me run through
You take
the next one. Okay, the next thing is like when you go to this, here's what Foxboro had. Okay, this is Phil Knobel's slide deck from 2017. He sent it to me, right? So how do you connect two systems? This is what Foxboro said. Hey, here's what we're gonna do. I don't care about that slide. Hey, look at this. Here are the things they want to talk about. Hey, look, my system is too big. That is not Rick's problem. My system is too big. Again, not Rick's problem. I have too many small and uncoordinated systems. Also not Rick's problem. They have a product that doesn't solve any of the problems that we're trying to solve. But if you look up here, kind of thrown in as an afterthought, a cyber attack could defeat a large portion of the plant's continuing operation. Hey, that's maybe, if we use it for that, some value there. Okay, they have this. Combine the system. How are we going to do this? This is what it does. Okay, here you go. And here's where Rick had the insight, or his field service guy, or whoever initially did it, and certainly Rick dreamed it up. If you look at this original slide deck from 2017, look, access request, tag location, and here we have read, yes, yes, write, no. We can read and we can set the right protection on it. But if you keep looking at this awesome slide deck from way back, notice this. We have a CNI, and in between it says customer supplied interconnection. Just says that, customer supplied interconnection.
So you would expect that you could just put a piece of Cat5 or a piece of fiber between your things.
You would think
That's
you
what you
could
would
just put a piece of cable between these two things and you could make them talk. That is a customer supplied interconnection. We spent the next 8 or 9 weeks making this customer supplied interconnection work. So I think there's a lot to be done here. This is the whole project was really doing extreme switch configuration and understanding what was in the customer supplied interconnection. So you go to the next slide and he goes, hey, look at this. We got some mesh switches. And notice these red lines. This is from their old thing, and it says customer supplied interconnection. This is just kind of glossed over. It's just tossed out there like, yeah, no problem. You just connect these things. You do not, if you want a really bad day at your plant, make 2 nodes and connect your mesh switches. Just see how that goes. That's going to be basically, you can shut the whole place down. Okay? Which we almost did. So we tried. So we got that going for us.
On our live system.
Yeah. So again, not really good. But here we go. And here's the value, again, from Foxboro's 2017 slides. Reduce the propagation of network failure or cyber attack. So almost as an afterthought, this is what they had. It's like, oh, yeah, it does that. So Rick calls me up and he goes, hey, what do you know about CNI? And I said, I know nothing about that. I never even heard of it. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll call around, start talking to people. So eventually I call Alex Johnson because sometimes you got to go all the way to the Oracle. And I did. I worked my way up to Alex and I said, hey, Alex, I got a CNI. Do you know anything about it? He goes, I helped develop that. I said, good. Finally, I got somebody that knows what they're doing. He says, I've never seen one. I said, that's fantastic. But he says, but that's a good use case. He goes, this cybersecurity thing sounds like a good plan. I think it'll work. I said, okay, I'll sign us up for this. How hard can it be? After all, Arlie's got to do all the hard work anyway. He's not here. So I know it's not going to be my problem. So I did it, and I read the manual, which I did. I spent a lot of time in the manual before we took on this project. And again, we have the customer supplied interconnection. So I'm reading the manual. It's like, well, how hard can this be? We're going to put a piece of wire between 2 CNIs and it's going to be great. And here's a picture from the manual and you can see them. And there they are in a base plate. And you see.
I just want to throw one thing. We did not go this far to get to that $60,000 price. We just went simplex. Okay, this is not a critical installation that we have. This is for business use, and so we did not put in anything in a redundant fashion as far as the CNIs. Just
Fair.
pointing that
Good
out.
point.
Go ahead.
All right, so we get these and we look in the manual and we go, okay, cool, that's going to be great. So Rick buys them and sends them down to us. He goes, so you guys put these in the lab, make it work. And I go, ah, no problem. We're going to put them in the lab, make it work. How hard can that be? And so we get them and we get them in the lab and we look at this. Once again, if you looked at the modules, take a quick look at the front of them, but you have these little network connections over here. So you go, oh, there's network connections over there. But then you get them and they're like, they don't. And I go, hey, when we get the pieces, we said, something's missing on this thing you sent us. There should be an Ethernet port right here in the front of this thing so that we can connect these modules.
With the customer supplied interconnect.
And they're like, yeah, that's where our customer supplied interconnect's going to go that you keep drawing in this box. And they're like, oh no, there's no Ethernet port on these modules. And we're like, wait a minute. This makes no sense. So now we got to go back to the drawing board. So I'll go to one before and then go back. So without going through the mesh switches, there's no way to connect a CNI to a CNI. Okay. So we go to call Alex. Finally, I had to go back to Alex again. And I'm like, Alex, there's no way to connect these things. There's nothing to connect. And Alex goes, oh, that's not how they work. And I said, well, they got to work that way. He goes, nope. He says, you got to connect your mesh switch on one node that you create, that you take a system definition. And notice that we made the view only node. This is what we did in the lab. You have to have a CSA and you have to have a CNI, but you don't have to have a CP on that node. That node is just sitting there with an AW hanging out with nothing on it. And then the trick is figuring out how to do this virtual router redundancy protocol between your mesh switches and getting the configuration on those correct. And when you do that, if this guy over here wants to see something, and this is how strange these things are, he has a table of the points he serves out, just like this guy does. You configure this and you say, I want everything to be read or read write or read only, and these are the compounds and these are the blocks you can see. And each one only knows about his side of the world. He doesn't know what's on the other side. He just knows what's on his side. And you know what's on this guy's side of the world? Nothing. He knows about nothing. So if you ask for any block, he has to go, I don't know it. So he sends it through this routing protocol, mesh to mesh, goes into the CNI on the other side, and he goes, I know about that. And then that guy makes a broadcast on his mesh out to his CP, gets that information, and sends it back through the tunnel. So it's effectively opening the object manager list that you want to see on this node in the CNI on this node, and then they route the traffic through the tunnel.
And as far as configuration is concerned, this guy here is all configured as read-only, and he owns that configuration. This guy's for our implementation. Now, you
Right.
can define it as read-write if that's appropriate, I guess.
Right.
But if
not,
you're going to
not for this instance,
right, if you're going to try to make
do.
a secure FOXU to a person's desktop, you want all of your whatever data it is you're going to send up on this side, it gets defined as read-only. And then on this side, you define a list which says, okay, I want to look for these. Where am I going to find it? You tell that CNI you're going to look for it over here. And so that becomes, there's a namespace file that you then deploy, which takes care of all those interconnects. But you define this is all read-only, and it kind of guarantees that no matter what you do, yeah, they can trash this AW, but it's still not going to affect your operating system. It's not going to, all you'll do is lose FOXU to the desktop. That's the only thing that's being exposed. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we talked to Alex. That's how we figured out how this thing works. The switches provide the VRRP tunnel that the CNIs communicate through. Now, the documentation they provided does not explain how the CNIs do this. They don't tell you how to set it up to do this. It really needs a complete rewrite on the Schneider documentation. You cannot execute and implement this given the information provided by the documents. Okay.
Yeah, the Foxboro needs to do a better job with this documentation.
Yeah. And then the other part is it throws you over into the switch configuration book, and it says, hey, for the user confined interface or the user customer supplied interface, it goes, set that up based on the switch configuration book with no configuration information about how to do that. So you have to have the right switches. You have to have the right switch firmware, and that is not the latest firmware. Okay. If you're using an Extreme 440 on edge switch, you have to buy a license to turn on VRRP, which is about $2,500, somewhere in that neighborhood. If you're using the Extreme 460s, they come with that VRRP already available. You have to still configure it, but it's in the switch. You don't have to buy a license. You have to know how to set up the switches. The switch config tool is horrible. Foxboro needs to work on the switch configuration tool.
To get the switch configured by our field engineer, I think was about 8 weeks of going back and forth. And it wasn't every day, but there was probably 8 weeks of development between him and his support TAC to get the correct versions of, and I can't tell you the name of the software that Foxboro uses to do the switch configuration. It took a heck of a long time. And when David said that you're going to start to watch me cuss, all right, I'm going to try to control myself. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was challenging. Okay. It's not a normal Foxboro vanilla switch configuration. We had to go back to Foxboro numerous times to get it configured right. And then to make Rick's implementation more interesting, this is all CNI, so we're kind of going to gloss over a big, interesting part of this project, is that we put a Linux machine in the middle, installed Guacamole, and the purpose of that was to dole out remote desktops to authorized users, and it was authenticating against the business network with an LDAP server in the corporate domain, and based on this, it would start the appropriate Foxboro desktop and send it to the browser.
And I'll add to that. So we, in our environment at Weslake, the corporate IT group likes to try to manage things to the nth degree, so that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you get this message that your computer is going to reboot in 5 minutes, whether you like it or not. And maybe you guys don't have that experience. But we wanted to have a system that was not going to be impacted by policy changes and automatic downloads. So we asked EOSYS, and that's what they did for us, is they developed a system that runs on a Linux server, and that Linux server is part of our business domain. And he's running this guacamole, which allows the Linux server to develop a VPN tunnel through our Palo Alto firewall devices. And you'll see all this here in another slide or two. But the guacamole is the presentation to the plant. They log on to that system. They get then an interface to be able to look at Foxboro screens. But the guacamole is there as the go-between. He runs. It's an Apache guacamole, and it has served us and then full disclosure, this system really wasn't fully operational, and it's still not deployed to the plant, but it is operational as of last week. Arlie was back on site last week to help us finish this up.
Right. Yeah. So this whole thing just, we were hoping that we were going to be able to say that everything worked, and we kind of can, but it might have been that this doesn't work. So we got that working. And if you have questions about guacamole and stuff, Larry Great in the back is your guy to talk to. Larry helped with all that. Yes, Roger.
We expect to have 25 users supported on the Foxboro side, on the desktop
View
side.
Yeah. 25. Yeah. So the
And
number
not 25 at any time. And we haven't actually acid tested it yet. We haven't done a stress test on the system yet to see that it'll support it.
but we do know how many compounds you're pushing through with the thing, and we do know that the throughput, I talked to Arlie about that, was good. And so once an object manager tag is on the view side, it really doesn't matter how many displays you point at it, because at that point it's already there. So once in other words, unless each display calls up more and more and more tags that no other display is looking at, and it will to some degree, I get that, it will put them in that object manager list that it's keeping on the view only side. We don't know really where that limit is, but we've pushed a pretty high number of tags. Once you get a high number of tags on one display, there's really not going to be much difference if you have multiple displays, coming through there and looking at that. That's more.
And that was on their development system. We haven't really
Right.
had an opportunity yet to do that in our production system. They had it in their shop, in their lab, and they developed,
We did some stress testing in the lab, and it looks like it's going to hold up very well because the number of users looking at it doesn't impact it. It's if every user pulled up a screen with 100 different points from every other screen, then the impact would be greater, and that may happen, but it's pretty much dependent upon the number of objects that get placed in there, not the number of people looking at it. Okay, so Rick's
and now there's our
big
implementation.
slide. Yeah.
So this is our existing Foxboro system. Okay, this was our Foxboro mesh, operating mesh. And this, in a sense, is all, or it's those Foxboro network. That's all our Foxboro network. This domain controller, however, our domain controller is off mesh. It's connected via a 192 network on this to interconnect our AWs. There's a separate DMZ, which isn't shown on here, which is developed with a set of firewalls here. So this domain controller, this server, I'm going to get too deep. Excuse me. You don't care.
You lost us about 30
right.
minutes ago.
I'm sure you did. So there is connections, which in a sense, when I say that there's no additional overhead, this connection is going to allow us to deploy screens down to this FoxU server. We develop the screens on our mesh. When we send the screens out to the deployed workstations, that same deployment will be able to send out our screens to this Foxboro server. What we've done in addition to what David was showing with these interconnects is this right here. We've installed Palo Alto firewalls to protect our existing mesh from this outside mesh. So even though it's set up as a read-only system, even though the CNIs should only allow communication to go from point to point based upon the configuration of these extreme switches here, we've additionally enforced that by putting a Palo Alto firewall protecting that mesh. We have this system here, which has got our FoxU running, and he gets connected to the plant through, there's our little guacamole server, and he creates a VPN tunnel to our FoxU server, and then he serves up to the rest of the plant. He'll serve up a web page with that remote RDP session inside of that web page. So you don't actually have an RDP running on your desktop. The RDP is running here on this guacamole server, and that kind of tells you where everything is.
Now, I realize you probably can't really see this, but we've got these presentations that are going to be put up at the Cassandra site, and we will make that known. But these are in PDF format on there, and you can look at this and zoom in on it, and the resolution is pretty good. If for some reason after this is over you care, the information is available, and you can say, oh, okay, that's how that kind of all goes together. So it's helpful to even though this is kind of an eye chart here, we have the ability to go back. You can look at this when you if you ever decide to. Why would you? I don't know. Anyway, carry on. Even though the Palo Alto firewall's inside, Rick, this is your stuff. This is what happened on site.
So when they first came on site to hook this up, because the switches at that point were not properly configured for us, right? They were the installation had been configured in EOSYS lab, and then they brought it to our plant. And in that installation, we ended up smurfing everything out. I mean, our plant went, our AIM collector shut down. Screens were going cyan throughout the plant. Luckily, there's not a whole lot of CP to CP communication going. OM lists, I think, just got totally overloaded. So it got hooked up and was hooked up for just a short period of time, and it all got disconnected. We also observed that there was a problem with our master timekeeper. And we haven't really discerned exactly what that problem was. The master timekeeper, we had a master timekeeper in our existing mesh, pointed to a GPS time clock. We established a master timekeeper on our read-only mesh, right? On our remote FoxU mesh, because it's its own mesh system. We didn't want to be sending master NTP stuff across this gateway. It's CNI to CNI. Well, somehow or other, and we never did really get a good answer as to how the master timekeeper function was bouncing back and forth between our read-only system and the production system. The production master timekeeper would try to take over on the read-only side. The read-only's master timekeeper would try to say, I'm the master timekeeper now. And when this first was happening, the master timekeepers weren't in sync. They were off by about 10 minutes. And so on the production side, it caused that. Once we finally got the switches properly configured, these issues disappeared. We're not seeing that problem anymore. And in addition to that, we're now pointing both master timekeepers are pointing to a GPS time server. So that's all better. As I say, then after the switches were all set up, everything worked as advertised. The read-only function works well. Throughput is all there. 500 compounds, reading only.
We did that, yeah.
It's all good. The system is working well. Within the next couple of weeks, we're doing a stress test on the system, opening up as many screens as we can, taking up all the seats of the FoxU, and putting up different screens on all those stations to ensure that we're getting good live information up to the people's desktops.
Yeah, and then the last thing is things that we would like to see as requested enhancements for this?
So currently, we can't get historical data through the CNI. If you try to populate a FOXU trend through the CNI, it doesn't. You're not getting historical data, and so that's an issue that we're trying to work on. I envision potentially having an AIM historian sitting on our DMZ to serve up that data. I don't want to have to set things up to populate all that data directly with hitting the CNIs for all that. I'm sorry, hitting the CPs with all those additional data requests is not a good thing. We've already seen issues in our plant with some of our CPs going cyan with overloading of OM lists. So we'd like to be able to pass read-only data, improve the switch configuration software. So as we talked about, one of the biggest, the most time that it took was getting these switches set up, and again, our field engineer was hand in hand with Foxboro TAC, and it was still a drawn out. I can't begin to tell you what all his issues were, but it was not pleasant for him or me. In all honesty, when we first developed this system, we were looking at this system going live for Labor Day. Okay, that was our initial of last year, and in the end, it went live, like I say, last week.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So you mean Labor Day to Valentine's Day, and we worked on it the whole time. That wasn't like, it wasn't constant, but we were waiting for field service to come in and put new configuration, and we try that. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay.
And
And we
get the right firmware installed.
Yeah.
And actually in the onset, the fact that we even needed to have these licenses installed on these extreme switches was not understood. It wasn't understood. We didn't know this until we were weeks into the development of the project.
Right.
To improve documentation, there needs to be some good documentation on the system. And then lastly, I say you add another Ethernet port. Foxboro now has Foxboro Schneider has now got this FDC 280 platform, and you've got these extra Ethernet ports on the side. Repurpose that base plate as a CNI base plate, and then use that port to make your interconnect.
Which solves a ton of problems on the mesh-to-mesh configuration.
That would make things. That would make this project a lot easier and more direct. Anyway, I think that's all I got.
It is. Now we're up to questions and possible answers. We don't know. Any questions, comments, concerns, ideas? Well, our intention to market as well. It is a sellable product. You can buy CNIs from Schneider and connect these. Our part of this at that point was the guacamole server, configuring that, the Palo Alto firewall, configuring that, setting all that stuff up, being able to use a single sign-on with your users from the IT domain. Go out there with an LDAP and get that information. That part, yeah, we would do that. That would be unique for each customer because everybody's got a different setup, but it would be similar. We have a proven way of going about doing it, and it works. Okay, so yeah, our goal would be that, but to Schneider's goal, this CNI to a view-only node, if you want to expose a view-only node, that part can be done without anything from us. But you have to be able to configure the CNIs correctly out of the gate. And I would say at this point, there is one field service guy in the United States that knows how to do it, and one other guy that knows how to do it, and our guy that knows how to do it. And you got three people that are competent to do that. Now, is that necessarily how it's got to be? No, that information, we learned so much in this, it's going to be so much easier for the next guy. If I had this slide deck without knowing anything else. If I literally had this slide deck 6 months ago and he calls me and I would look at that and go, huh, okay, there's going to be a lot of weird switch configuration here we're going to have to deal with. That's going to be where we're going to be struggling. And I would have known that, but we did not know that. And there was no way to know that. Even after we got done, we went back and looked, we go, what did we miss? It's not there. We didn't miss it. It's not there. So now we know what's not there. We could say, oh, you need to do this. You need to do this. This is how you do it. Things that took us weeks could be done in a matter of hours. And so so the goal of this is not to say this isn't good. We struggled. Okay. This was not easy. The goal of this is to say these lessons learned, which we're trying to share and impart here, are not being held back for like, hey, give me money, I'll tell you how to do this. These are like, hey guys, this is where the dragons are. Watch for this. This is what you need to be careful of. This is how you got to do this. You need to do this. This is how it works. And once you know that, you're not going to have those problems. We wouldn't have these problems again. We would have problems. There's going to be problems getting the guacamole server to the LDAP. There's going to be problems in your configuration. But if you set those switches up, the mesh switches right, and knew what you were doing from the get-go, we'd be months ahead, literally, on what we did. There's no part number for customer supplied connection. Yeah. And the customer supplied connection part is the part that should be extremely similar from switch configuration setup. This is the part that, the part that is really unique is, Rick says, I'll throw in a Palo Alto firewall. I need this guy to be able to sign on to his IT domain instead of the Foxboro domain user thing. I need it to be able to serve up the right graphics based on who that guy is. I need it to do, all that stuff we had to figure out and do. That's unique to Weslake. That is not going to work for everybody else. But if you wanted to make a view-only node inside your plant with access to your people inside your plant, now this is not with all the special stuff, you could do that without us doing anything.
Well, I had the hardware costs up there. I mean, and the rest of the costs was between us and Foxboro and us and EOSYS.
Yeah.
But it was, I would say that this job here had probably a man year of work into the job altogether.
But at this point,
Probably a man year worth of work, and how it was built. I know I wasn't built for a man year, but and I would imagine from moving forward, you got about a man month of work.
Yeah, I think that's about where we're at.
And one thing that I didn't happen to mention, I mentioned it briefly, just as a point. We had a inside of our DMZ, we had a VMware host, and we deployed these systems onto VMware. And so, there was a guy here a couple years back, one of these I was at, from Stratix, who was talking about using Stratix hardware. We had very little problem in deploying our AWs onto a VMware host, and so as opposed to a Hyper-V, and we got the support we needed through our field engineer, and all was good. Just as another aside, so if you've got a VMware system, and I know VMware with what is it? Broadcom took over VMware.
Broadcom
is that right?
took over and
maybe
changed the
people are
pricing
backing
for
away
you.
from
Yeah.
that. But anyway, and from what I understand, Windows is now pricing Hyper-V is to be included with your server, and maybe that becomes, maybe you're willing to stay with Hyper-V. Anyway, just wanted to let everybody know that VMware worked absolutely fine as far as supporting those AWs.
Any other questions? We are
Go ahead.
2 minutes over maybe. What? Go ahead. Oh, the system. Well, on your original node, none. You added a CNI.
We had to
You
add
had to
the
add a
new
CNI.
CNI.
You go to your original system definition on your existing node, and you add one CNI and put it out there. The new node, the view only node, is a whole new sysdef. You actually just define it, but you define a CSA, an AW, and a CNI. That's it. you're done. I mean, you got to put in your system monitors and all that, but that's the only component. You have a box, a CNI, a mesh switch, and that's it. I mean, it's nothing. And then that, you know,
There was one other thing that I was asked, that Arlie asked me to point out, and I knew it and I forgot, and it wasn't in the notes, so it didn't come out. One bug that's out there is, you said sysdef. There's also system, the tag browser, Fox Select. If you go to Fox Select and you pick the CNI, you've now crashed your Fox Select. It just crashes. And from what I understand, this is a known error, and would
It's a
seem to be
feature.
something that can be fixed, but hasn't been addressed. And you're not going to see compounds when you hit that CNI. It's
Yeah.
not really a device, so you're not going to see anything underneath it, even if it did work. But what happens is when you select it, it just gives it up. You shut that Fox Select down and start again. Yeah, don't do that. Don't push that button.
You know, the original, like, you know, I have my little subtitles and stuff, and my original first slide in this was configuring a CNI is a lot like poking yourself in the eye with a fork. It just feels so good when you stop. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I be heard? Yeah, there we go. My name is Chris Ricker. I'm with EOSYS 100 years ago with Foxboro, and I've been messing around with IA systems for ages. A few years ago, we had someone who had trouble finding forces in there, probably a few hundred FBMs that have ladder logic in them, sprinkled around a plant. So we put together something to make that job a little easier. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. This 10-minute tip deals with the force reporting tool that we built. We describe what the tool is, and we're going to pass on enough information so that if somebody else wants to build one, they can do that too. There's technical information here that will be available in a PDF, and I'm not going to go into it too deeply. So, IA systems that can run ladder logic and discrete FBMs. That logic is configured and managed through PLB blocks. The ladder itself is attached to an ECB8, and the PLB block delivers the ladder to the ECB, which delivers the ladder to the FBM. Ladder logic and the tools to configure and manage it are pretty rudimentary, but it's pretty fast ladder logic, so there's some good reason to have it. Multiple PLB blocks can provide ladders to a single ECB, but you almost never run into that, and we didn't build the tool to take that into account. We're assuming one PLB block connects to one ECB. The system comes with the tool to see ladder operations in real time and to manage the forces. That's the PLB monitor. There's a second one that provides view-only access to the same thing, which is called PLB View. These are the only tools that IA provides to deal with forces at all. EOSYS built a tool to query each CP on a hosting AW, to locate each ECB8 and FBM, and determine and record what forces are set. The tool includes a display to show the current forces, the history of force activity, and this display is put up in FoxView. That tool can be run on a schedule, or from a command line, or from a display pick. It can run on a single CP or on all the CPs hosted by a given AW. For each CP, which is online, this tool will first checkpoint the CP, and then with the correct DBVU, it'll build a text file of the blocks that are in the CP. Then it examines that file, locates each ECB8, and examines its force table. For each forced tech ID, that is contact input, contact output, etc., the force state on or off is determined. The script then queries which PLB block is supplying the ladder to that ECB, and that ladder is queried for the tech IDs and the 2 7-character descriptors that go with each one. That information is then recorded in a current forces file. The creation time and date, that is when the file was created, is coded into the name so that we get automatic sorting by time and date when you pull it up in your Windows Explorer. We sort with year, month, day, hour, minute, kind of like the ISO format suggests. We also build a force history file. The force history file is a comparison of previous to current forces and records what has been added or removed from forces for each of the FBMs. That file is prepended with an underscore, so it always shows up at the top of the list of force file information. Now the PLB monitor shows forces which are red if they're forced on, or blue-green if they're forced off for each tech ID. And yeah, our display shows what the forces are. You see in the top left corner, that's the current set of forces. You see the CP name, the PLB block, the particular tech ID that's forced, those 2 7-character descriptors for that tech ID, and then the direction, forced on or forced off. That's a block text file that's similar to what's done with sequence code listings. So to the right, you have buttons to move back and forth through the file if it's bigger than that display. Move up and down or back to the beginning. The force history file is shown in a text block. And that thing comes with scroll bars if it's necessary. And over on the right, we have the log file output from the previous run of this script. If you punch the run button, it runs that script for all of the CPs on your AW. if you punch the compare button, it calls up a program called VDIF32, which is part of the standard software load on an AW. And what it allows you to do is, look, pick two of the force files and compare them and see what's different. It shows the forces side by side with added or deleted lines shown with a background color change. This is the same idea, but we have three different flavors of the way we've done this, and this is the one that shows CP and ECB name in the first two columns, and does not have those 7-character tech ID descriptors that we showed earlier. This is the full set of FBMs in 200 series and 100 series with extenders of blocks that can, of FBM types that can carry ladder logic. We don't need to examine it now, it's in a PDF. These are the tech IDs that are used by all of the ladder logic throughout the system. Contact inputs, contact outputs, input flags, output flags, timer flags, and internal flags. I'm not sure that I'm correct where I say that the internal flags can't be forced. I think they actually can. Now, when we run this, we dig out the names of the CPs that we're going to query in a file in the ATC folder on the D drive called NTCPLNS. That's a list of all of the CPs that are hosted by the current AW. When we then need to find out what the model number is for each of the CPs, because we run a different version of DBVU with each one. There's a file that's part of the system definition install, the commit install, which is called iif.pkg. It's a list of all of the software packages on the system. That's in userfox SP on the D drive. What we show here is what is necessary to run DBVU for 270 stations. It's the DBVU 270. We have to bring a file in called map offsets and then run DBVU. And that has, it's good to note, there's an option for whether or not it's an FCP or a ZCP. And I still work with ZCPs. They're still out there. The fields that we're interested in are FOF mask, which shows us which of the tech IDs are forced off, and FON mask, which shows us which of them are forced on. We also need to see the hardware type because the same bit in a table may mean different things in different files. In one case, it may be, for instance, contact output number 1, but in a different FBM, it would be contact input number 9. So same bit would be used in those two different. This is what's used to run the DBVU for the CP280. It's a little bit different, and it is a different executable. But it's the same FON mask and FOF mask, and hardware type fields are used in both cases. Now, there are some 16 bytes of data. Each byte has 8 bits, and each bit is a force on or a force off bit for one tech ID. This table is what they are for the different, across the top you see the different FBM types. Down the left-hand side is the different point numbers in and out. Over on the right-hand side, those are the bytes and the bits that they're in. This is for the I/O input-output bits specifically. And this next one is for the others, the input flags, output flags, internal flags, and then the timer flags. Within each byte, 8 bits represents a number. Each bit, yes, the sum of the bits that are on determines what the value of the byte is. So for instance, if the high order bit is set, that's bit 0. which corresponds in some cases, for instance, to CIN1, that if it's in the first bit, or CIN9 if it's in the second byte. That would be a value of -128. The next one would be a value of 64. If both of those bits are set, summed together, they come up with a value of -64. And by looking at -64, you can back up and find out which bits were set. Got a couple of examples here. That first example shows you that the second byte, which is in the off mask, that would be contact output number 1, for instance, in an FBM10. That's the -128. On the second line, which is the force on mask, that first bit in the first byte represents contact input number 1. If we look at the second example there, we see that the FON mask is telling us that contact input number 2 is forced on. That's because 64 represents bit 1 of that byte, and so forth. Same thing on a few more examples that I'm going to rush through because I'm, a little over already. Within the PLB block, we find the proper PLB block by looking for the IOM ID that a PLB block has entered. This is in the file that's spit out by DBVU. From there, we pick up the description of the block if we need it. One of the flavors of our program uses that. But we use a program called PLB dump, which has been available since 1999 in various places. It's on our Cassandra website now. PLB dump will dump out the labels of a given PLB block, from the ladders of a given PLB block. So what we do is we take that, run it through a script tool, in my case it's awk, and pull out the 2 descriptors for the particular tech ID that we're interested in. If I want to schedule this, Windows has a task scheduler, and we plug it into the task scheduler, put in a time base, put in a command line. Because the one that we wrote is a Unix script, we have to run it under the Nutcracker environment, and that's highlighted there is the call for the Nutcracker environment. Here, for somebody who wants to dig into it, is more direct code as to how DBVU is called up. DBVU 270 and 280, they're part of the standard Foxboro tool set that comes in an AW when you buy it. They're located in the D drive in OptFoxBin tools. PLB dump was written by a guy named Kevin Miller, I never met him, of W. Arthur Fisher in New Zealand back in 1999. And that's on the Cassandra website. Now, I tried to download it the other day and I found out that the one on the Cassandra website is for a Sun Unix box. So we'll be putting up the Windows version. It's not there today, but it will be tomorrow probably. And that's that. Questions, or should I just go away? These are my reading glasses, so I can't tell if anybody's eyes have glazed over.
Like I said, fastest ever. How to auto reboot an FDSI. If you're like anybody else, it's been 0 days since the last time your FDSI stopped working. And this is the most technical presentation of the day. This is what it takes to reboot an FDSI. If you can read that, that's the HLBL code. It's the action parameter. You set it to 8, and that will reboot your FDSI. I'll skip to the end of this that talks about, timing that so it doesn't reboot every 2 seconds. It waits some time and then waits for it to come back. But if you're able to scan that, that's the Cassandra website, or if you haven't been to it, and that's where the script will be. All right. On the free list, we'll send out the links to the presentations and to that script. The script, this runs in an independent block, obviously. That's the key takeaway. Action equals 8. All right. Why do you not want to do that? Why isn't it exposed? It is. exposed.
Your stuff from
Yep.
automatically rebooting items from sequence code is probably not a great idea under general guidelines. You just don't want to do that. But if you have we'll show you the sequence code if you go on site. I'm trying to speed things up. And then bam, I got screwed up by talking. Like if you monitor the status of the FDSI and you know that it's down, right? And we've monitored the status, we know it's not working, it's not talking, and we want to reboot it automatically, you can monitor the status and your sequence code can then issue a reboot to the FDSI and you wait and hopefully it comes up. And then our sequence code goes a little further, it waits and it starts actually going, okay, we're going to reboot it every X number of minutes once we see that it's gone down because we're trying to get it back up. And then it starts increasing the length of time and trying to do that. It's like, okay, it didn't come up twice. We tried twice in 10 minutes or whatever. Okay, now go in an hour, try it again. And then it tries it every hour for some period of time. And then it says, okay, I don't know why your PLC or whatever is on the other side of this FDSI is not there. Now we're going to space this out to every 12 hours. And then the sequence code does all this. So the takeaway is that's how you do it in sequence code if you wanted to do it. The long answer is we have a piece of automated code that says, oh, it's down. We know that rebooting it might get it back up. We can automatically reboot it. We'll try it a few times. Sequence code goes through that. And then we will start backing that number off so we're not constantly rebooting this module, hoping that whatever's on the other end comes back up. And I took the fastest one and made it normal length. So there you go. And up next is Gaylon with the user roundtable where we can all, talk kind of like we did to Thad, but not so much about just fussing at Thad.
Or Marcel.
Or Marcel. Yeah, this is where we won't have to talk.
Luckily, it's after 5 p.m., so he had a drink.
So instead of a round table, could we just do a Dunkin' booth next year and call it a day? I mean,
I like the way you're thinking.
all right. Okay. All right. This is the round table piece. So, as if it wasn't already, we're going to throw it wide open to whatever anybody's got here. Anybody got any burning questions or concerns or any information you want to share with the group? So this is wide open for everybody. Yeah. Well, let me just ask here. I mean, this number's growing every year. Who's running virtualization now on their systems? Who's running? Yeah. Pardon? Pardon? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, who's running virtualization on their systems now? Looks like we got a fair amount here. It's growing every year. Has anybody got any problems or lessons learned from going virtual they want to share with the group? Okay.
No, hold on. I'm gonna get I'll give you if you ask, because we got people online.
Said the only problem I'm really having is the enunciator keyboards on the HP thin clients. For some
Okay.
reason, they'll just stop working, and it requires actually rebooting the host to get them to start working again. And the operators, my internal customers, are really upset about that.
Okay. Anybody else in the group got any feedback on that? Have they seen that? Or okay. Should we all run?
Yeah.
Gaylon, I'm not sure. We've gotten away from the any Foxboro salespeople in here. We've started using 10-zig instead of the Foxboro sold thin clients on the stuff that's virtualized. There was a funky little thing with restraint on the disk read and writes that used to make the thin clients misbehave pretty badly. It's meant to try to extend the life of the disk, the HDD in the thin client. We found you turn that off, burn the hard drive up, throw it in the garbage, and buy you another thin client for $500 and go on about your way. It works properly, but you got to resolve yourself that those things are essentially disposable.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Appreciate that.
I've been pretty rock solid. How many heads are you running on your 10 sig? Single heads? So you can run 6 heads on a thin client, guys. You actually 10 zig.
Well, of the people that are doing virtualization, who's running non-standard HP thin clients?
Everybody.
Obviously you.
I am. So.
And TVAs, well, they're non-standards. They're the Pepperell
10
Pooch rugged thin clients. They're officially not supported, but kinda.
So you can take a Dell adapter and put on a 10 zig, and you can run 6
whatever you
heads
call
on a thin
them.
client. So most thin clients will only allow you 4 heads. I've been running 6 heads since March and no problem. So that is a way you can get 6 heads. 'Cause most screens, you know, some operators had 12 screens, and you go to a thin client, then you had to add the extra thin client, which adds another mouse, another keyboard. So you can go around some of these features by doing the dongle, Dell dongle on it. These are reasonably priced. I think my 10 zigs I bought last was less than $1,200, you know, and then you get a Dell adapter for them, less than $500. So versus a WP or something sitting out there, you have your VMs virtualized. It's just a VM host.
First.
10 Zig started doing the direct cage SFP for the network connections.
Right.
Used to be if you were going from hard workstations to the thin clients, you ended up with fiber media converters everywhere. Now you don't have to do that anymore. It cleaned it up a little bit.
Right. So that's a good product. You know, if you're looking for an alternative from the HP 730s, I would definitely spend the money, get one, test it. You'll probably like it.
Well, we're in the process on the, what's the latest 740s they just released? You can put an add-in card in, an SFP card. It's not an officially supported card from Foxboro, but it's officially supported from HP. And we're in the process of testing that with 2 fiber connections that would, I think, do exactly what you're talking about. Drop it in place of a workstation, straight to fiber, go about your business. Some of the other things we're looking at on thin clients and networking is for SFPs where you're constrained by fiber, number of fibers, but if you've got some single mode fibers, you can go with the single fiber SFPs. You don't need the pair fibers. We're going to check that. It's just networking. It'll, you know, if you get in a bind, something that should work pretty easily. And on the issue with the keyboard, the enunciator keyboard, you're going to have problems trying to get the physical ports on the thin clients back to the virtual machine just by the nature of the beast. What's driving that? I have no idea. Depends on how the drivers are set up on that. That would be. Okay, I was going to say that's where Foxboro is going to have to look at how their software's interface into that. I've got no idea. I don't have an enunciator keyboard, so. But I know just in general, getting virtual machines to talk to hardwares serially is kind of fun. Anybody got anything else?
Yeah, the virtualization, how are you doing the horn? Are you doing it with the external horn connection, or does it work with the thin client like it does with the workstation? Enunciate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just wherever you set it up on your system monitor to drive it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So I've had a question where I've been doing these quarterly week updates for the Windows patches.
Mhm.
Ever since I feel like I've started doing those, I've had unexplained blue screen errors, and anytime I bring that to Schneider with the mini dump files, it's more or less we can't really figure out why it crashed. And there's been some times where, fortunately, it hasn't been the main AW, but it's been our workstations that I just had a spinning wheel try to reload from the blue screen error. So I don't know if anyone's experienced that and if there's any solutions to hopefully mitigate that.
Is this patching your VMs?
Yeah, from the website. Yeah. So it's qualified from the website, and then I upload it onto the DCS system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't seen the problem yet.
Yeah. So the other thing is,
So are you patching the VMs or the host?
actually, yeah, that was my next
Yes.
question. Yeah, so we are on virtual, so I do the individual workstations, and then I also do the virtual machines.
Okay.
So again, there's been errors that sometimes where I've gotten like a group policy is being pushed to my workstations, and that keeps on loading, and more or less we have to just wait till it comes back online, or I've had to re-image it with the help of a field service tech.
Well, one thing I'll reiterate that Joe was saying is wait a month on patches, because Foxboro rolled out a patch 2 years ago that basically broke Hyper-V. So I'd give it a month or two on all these patches.
Okay.
And it's worthwhile looking out in the real world, the Microsoft world, to see if there's problems with patches. Because the problem with the Hyper-V patch was reported by Microsoft and still got rolled out to Foxboro. So just give it a little time. And on your VMs, make sure you got good exports to start over from.
Yep.
That's sometimes that's your best bet. If you load it, it crashes it, start over.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah. So we just gave you some workarounds, no real answers, but and we looked sympathetic while we told you so. Okay. So who's not regularly patching your Windows machines here? Well, you're regular, just really long intervals. So. Microsoft patches, yeah. And I would imagine everybody's patching, it's your corporate cybersecurity that's driving you, isn't it? Not pushing you to do it. Okay. 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 Well.
Basically just rebuilt it, and yeah, we just stopped patching.
Okay.
Well, temporarily.
Okay. Back to make sure you got recent exports, but actually it's a good idea before you go to install patches, export everything back up. Be anticipate failure, plan for recovery.
So if I could relate it to patching real quick, there's a number of things in the security community today that really tell you to do risk-based vulnerability management. And if you're patching on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual basis, and you're just doing what Microsoft asks you to do, even if you're delaying it 60 or 90 days, you're really not evaluating risk and making a risk-based decision. Should I actually deploy that patch or not? And so what I would encourage you to do instead is really understand what patches are in that roll-up, whether it's a Microsoft patch, a Foxboro patch, or even some PLC system you're working with. If you have other security controls in place, it is not unreasonable to say, I'm not going to patch but once every 6 months, once a year, maybe even less frequently than that, depending on the vulnerability and how close to the edge the device that's vulnerable is. I mean, obviously, if it's something that's sitting right on the enterprise, different answer than if it's deep inside your OT infrastructure. So just my encouragement is take a look at actual risk and make a risk-based decision about, do I actually patch this or not? Because there is risks, to your point, of rolling out a patch and it breaking VMware, to actually deciding to deploy something. Last comment I'll just make real quick related. If the patch actually fixes, for example, an exploit in, say, a PLC or something where I can actually have full write access to everything in the controller, why would I bother ever installing that patch? Because at the end of the day, that PLC doesn't likely do any kind of authentication anyway. And so if an adversary is on the network and throws a command out or even a change in code to the controller, it's just going to accept it and do it. And so that's an example of a patch that you might make the decision to just choose to live with and never actually deploy.
Okay, thank you. No, and to that point on the Foxboro quick fixes and patches, they usually have a good write-up of what they do, what they're, what they mitigate. You can make a decent job of evaluating those. I know, Heather, you go through the patches, and y'all do too, and actually evaluate, are we going to install them? The Microsoft patches, their descriptions are, we fix stuff and things, and it's all going to be better when we're done. So
Well, it depends also on where you look in terms of what Microsoft actually provides for context. Sometimes there's additional information in the CVE bulletin that Microsoft doesn't put in the patch roll-up itself. So if you look at national vulnerability databases or other things, you'll also find recommendations for mitigation. So you make the decision on a Microsoft patch to accept the risk and move on. You may find in the NVD that there's information about, well, you should make these group policy changes because doing so may even eliminate the need for the patch completely, in which case you might make the decision, I'll make the group policy updates, push that out through my domain controller, and again, not bother patching something.
Okay. Well, let me ask this, is anybody on their IA system actually reviewing the Microsoft patches and deciding, yes, we're going to roll them out, or no, we're not? Or is it more of a, we're going to do them all, or we're not doing any of them? Okay, so you're getting all the Foxboro ones then? Okay.
Now, that's the only ones we're putting in off the website. Supposed to be smoke tested.
Well, and I don't think, is anybody patching straight off Microsoft site? Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Not.
But I mean, still pulling them off the Foxboro site, I think most people are just pulling them and deploying them, not doing any kind of review that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't know, so for my benefit real quick, because it's been a while since I've worked on a Foxboro system, when you pull that patch roll up from Foxboro and you go to deploy it, is that an install, or what are you using to push those? Yeah, that's the DAT files, but what about the actual Microsoft roll-ups? So you're using WSUS? So has anybody had a conversation with Schneider about what you're going to do since Microsoft's deprecating WSUS? Is anybody in here aware that Microsoft is deprecating WSUS?
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of curious what you guys are doing where that's concerned.
Well, there's third-party things out there, but nothing that really makes you go, oh, that's great.
So I was going to say, have you found one you like? Because I haven't, I mean, again, I'm really asking questions because it's a question I legitimately have in terms of I don't feel like I have a good answer. If you were to come to me today and say, hey, I need to push Microsoft patches, I know I don't want to use WSUS because I'm standing up something new. What should I use? I'd be like, I'm not sure yet. So that's why I was curious if anybody had any ideas.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know, I'm sure you've heard of Ricardo Abesh, right? Yeah, he's got a product called ABE Guardian that we use, and that's what it does. It goes out on the Foxboro site and gets the approved Foxboro patches. And then it has agents that you can install, and it'll install the patch. And then all you got to do is reboot the box, and you're done. And it does that with the DAT files too. So.
Okay. I don't think that addresses the issue you were talking about, though, of actually evaluating the patches. That's relying strictly on Schneider for the patch evaluation.
Anybody went into the new system definition, the latest system definition tool? Have y'all seen where you can assign only one IP address to a box, to a AW? Well, I've heard this rumor and I wanted clarification on it. They're telling me now you don't have to put, one NIC card will do A bus or B bus. They switch automatically. That's the new system definition, which I haven't looked at. But I'm sort of curious how that's going to work. You could. I mean, you'd have to have a splitter to do it, but I don't know. That's why I'm wanting more clarification on it. And I ain't got up with the right guy from Snyder yet on the system definition tool, the latest system dev. Just a rumor I heard. I don't know if it's true yet or not, but I'd like to clarify it.
Yeah, haven't touched the new sys dev. Tim, have y'all done anything recently?
It isn't standard. What he's saying is the first time hearing of it.
Okay. Yeah, we're no help, John. Okay. Anybody got anything else? Yeah.
Yep, I'll get to my.
Is there anybody in here that's actually used Control Software 8 or the new server versions? Yeah, it's got. I just, you've got a pretty small migration in that. I'm just curious if the new servers, how stable they are.
Been rock solid.
Okay.
Haven't had any issue.
Yeah, I know Marcel talked about system platform. That's 10 years of progress.
Little getting used to. Something used to be here, now it's over here.
Yeah, it's kind of like going from Excel 2003 to
Yeah.
Office 365. The ribbons are look different, and
I mean, it's light years from where it was at like version 1 and version 3. But to me, it's like the point earlier was that it's slow. It's still slow. Yeah.
the thing I want to see, I've heard it said a few times, you can deploy Control HMI without restarting the HMI. That's not mentioned in the documentation anywhere, and I don't know anybody who's running InTouch on the latest version outside of Foxboro. Usually go to OMI. So I would just like to see confirmation of that and what that looks like. Is it, do you just deploy like normal? Is that?
Yeah, we don't have Control HMI, so I don't know the process, but I know what it used to look like. But I believe he's told me that yes, you get a prompt on the screen that says, "Do you want to, restart now?" So it can be delayed.
Yeah, so you can do that.
Yeah.
Previously you could say no.
Well, I may be wrong.
But I think what's been promised, Larry looks like he knows. So.
Structure to be able to support it, but essentially it deploys it to the client. You won't see it until you change the screen and change back to it, but it's zero impact to the end user, and that's been part of Orchestra for at least 3 or 4 years. Does anybody know?
He said it just came with the newer version of system.
It just came with a new version of.
So you just deploy like normal, and you just don't get the pop up anymore.
Yep, it just pushes the actual updates to the graphics on the back end. Whether you're using InTouch, OMI, whatever Foxboro calls OMI, it doesn't make any difference.
They're not supporting OMI.
Oh, you're not supporting OMI, so you're still using InTouch or
InTouch.
Okay. Yeah, it just kind of shows up in the background when you change screens and change back. You'll see the new display. It's pretty cool.
Easy to migrate.
And speaking of control software, we asked earlier, who's still running ICC FoxView Foxdraw? Oh wow, fewer people than I thought, but it runs great and it's fast. So. Should I say something about prizing the ICC from my cold, dead hands. So, in honor of Terry Dio. Hey, anybody got anything else you want to talk about? Questions?
I do, guys. I'm sorry. So, with the FDSI, the FDC 280 debate kind of raging, and they're starting to roll out some drivers for the FDC. How many people, let's say, to use the Ethernet IP control logics, which I think is going to be a pretty commonly found thing out in the field, how many people are simply using the FDC and the database therein as a mailbox for information from, let's say, a control logics or another third party device? In other words, you're using it just to get information in front of the operator's eyeballs, or are you actually running some additional control strategy using the information flow, like, let's say, from a PLC or a VFD, like alarms, etc.? In other words, I've long contended with Aviva, the legacy of Wonderware, that some of the flow of information could be much more straightforward with drivers and an interface to the HMI rather than an additional piece of hardware and drivers and another database and more stuff to maintain.
Yeah, to make sure I know what you're saying there, like Control HMI does support all of the drivers that Wonderware does. It's licensed kind of weird. I think you'd have to like convince your sales guy or explain what you're talking about.
So I've been told explicitly the exact opposite of what you just said by multiple people within Foxboro that no, it absolutely does not. That Control HMI is a Foxboro specific bastardized version of InTouch, and it does not play well with any other drivers from any third parties, Wonderware specifically.
Yeah, I know. How long ago was the last national users group? There's a presentation on there where they, I forget which company it was, but they did a presentation on talking to Siemens PLCs using just the Siemens drivers that Wonderware or Aviva sells. I will say that Marcel was there at the time, and it's, you know, he was not, I won't say he was against it or even thought it was, you know, but he it's kind of considered a, he thought of it as kind of a novel solution as opposed to like something that they're encouraging you, like you should do this instead.
So you're telling me Foxboro might actually give their customers mixed messages? Come on, man.
I said that. Let me give somebody else a microphone to say something different. I'm 99% sure that on the latest version, if you can get the license for it, the real problem is that your Foxboro engineering license comes with like 200 app engine points, which is enough to run like the system level stuff, but nothing else.
Do you have something? Okay.
I guess the Schneider sales guys might hate me for this question, but so this relates to the 2022 server upgrades that we were just talking about earlier. So right now, my site has the virtual machines that I think were offered a Gen 10 or a Gen 11 VM server offering. They both are supported by 2022. When we upgraded to the Windows 2016, I think we bought the latest and greatest Gen 9 version, right. But it seems now upgrading to the 2022, we're saying we need to upgrade those to another generation. So based on the cycle of how often we have to update the server, is it worth staying with the Gen 10, which isn't the latest and greatest, or go to Gen 11? Because I'm just curious if next time when this server 2020, I don't know, 8 or whatever you said, gets released, are we going to have to now upgrade the yeah, so
I'll give you my take, and then somebody may want to weigh in on the official one.
Sure.
But if you go look at Dell and HP sites, A lot of the boxes that supported 2016 and 2019 don't support 2022.
Yes.
There's a break there.
Yeah.
So really it boils down to, will
Cost
HP support, say they really support 2022?
Mhm.
Because I got a sneaking suspicion Snyder's not going to sell you a box that the HP says won't support 2022 with 2022 on it.
Yeah.
So
right now it's we're being offered Gen 10 versus Gen 11, which both will support 2022. They're saying, but I guess my question is, if every upgrade we have to do for a server, we have to purchase hardware again, is it worth just going to that Gen 10 rather than the Gen 11, which would then have to replace the next server installation?
Personally, on the Gen 10 to Gen 11, I'd go with the latest you can buy. That gets you a few more years of support. Good thing about server hardware, the workstation hardware, the desktop workstations, they're in production a few years. Parts are hard to get. 10 years, they're impossible to get. Servers, you can get parts in 10 years. Servers are in, especially the big HPs and Dells, they're in so many critical applications. You can go online and find parts for, 15-year-old Dells and HPs right now. So you can, hardware-wise, you can get probably more life out of them than the software is going to be supported.
Okay.
So just, it's sort of your choice on that.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked at the HPs. I don't know if there's any advantages over the Gen 11s versus the 10s. I mean, does anybody here know? Anybody's looked at the servers, the HPs? I could probably tell you next year better on this, because we got an upgrade in progress that's going to look at that. So
yeah.
But right now, no. But again, general rule of thumb, I'd go with the latest hardware. I doubt the price is going to be any different from Foxboro. So no driver to go with the older stuff that I know of. Does anybody know a reason you'd go with an older server? Only reason I do it is if you had a bunch of the old ones and wanted to standardize. And did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it mainly stemmed from if we have to upgrade the server every single time on these, if the hardware needs to be upgraded every time, then why always go to the latest hardware like the Gen 11 if we're going to have to replace that again the next time the server comes to 2028?
Well, hopefully when 2028 comes out, it'll support Gen 11.
Okay.
If you want to keep it at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Because when we upgraded to Gen 9, we were told that that's the latest and greatest.
And
then,
yeah.
And then
that's the last server you'll ever buy.
Yeah. Okay. And then now we're being posed that same question again. So that's why I was really stemmed from that question.
Yeah. Windows 10 is the last OS you'll ever buy. Well, till 11.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Something to keep in mind is that every time or upgrade servers, they'll change the fiber connections from MTRJ to LC or whatever, so you'll have to have new fiber or adapters, and they'll change the video, so you'll have to have new video cables. Just forewarned.
Okay. And the demise of MTRJ, we should all celebrate. Those things are horrible. Yeah. Thank you. Because, yeah, you couldn't make them up in the field, so.
No. Hold on. He's moving away from you.
The workstation's Dell. No.
Yeah, they're still on the HPs, and they sell a few standard configurations. And I'll just throw out there, anybody looking at an upgrade, their standard disk array setup, the RAID array setup's pretty plain Jane vanilla. You can do a lot better than what they do out of the box as far as redundancy and speed.
What's it, 6?
Y'all are awful quiet. This is calm.
I feel like Joe got a lot of it out with Thad, and that kind of was like cathartic, and then you don't get as much in this. Yeah.
I wasn't complaining.
When did you change your name to Joe, David?
I didn't. That was Joe. Not me. I had a lot of good questions in that deck, though. A lot of those were mine.
I think David wrote that slide after like a 12-hour shift of working in orchestra.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody got anything else?
Because it.
Ben, did you want to ask about your FCP 280 errors?
Okay. Well, we'll get another chance maybe tomorrow to hit up a little bit as we talk. If there's not anything else, it's 5 o'clock, so it's quitting time.